And I'm Joshua Bardwell. And yeah, you know you love it. I'm just checking my audio. Everything sounds good to me. I don't hear a huge amount of echo or feedback. And now I can tell from the chat how much lag there is. Hey everybody, I'm Joshua Bardwell, and you're going to learn something today. At least I sure hope you do. That's why I say that at the beginning of most of my videos. I've been trying out a new intro. Did you guys notice I've been trying out a new intro? Yeah, trying to do the YouTube thing. Apparently, well, anyway, I won't get into it, but I still want you guys to learn something at all of my videos, and that's why we're here today. We're here to learn in my Q&A live stream. This is my opportunity to connect directly with you guys, get questions, and just, what I'm about in my videos is helping you enjoy the great hobby of FPV. And anytime, sometimes I just get into my little studio and I'm making videos and I'm answering comments and I get a little bit lost, and it's, I always know I'm doing the right. If I spend all day, every day doing Q&A live streams, I would be sure I was doing the right thing because it's just helping you guys directly. Let's see. Stream looks good and sounds great, says one person. Another person says, anyone lagging massively on the stream? I think it's got to be on your end. Hopefully the stream is good. It looks good on my end. I got a call out for a volunteer right here at the beginning of the stream. So when I upload, if you don't get to watch the stream live, then I'm going to upload it to my channel later, okay? And the problem is it's going to be like a 3 or 4 hour stream, and people always ask, hey, Joshua, it would be really helpful if you would make like a table of contents or index, if you would do like timestamps, right? And the problem is that I can't do that while I'm live streaming because it would just be too distracting to be writing this stuff down. And I'm not going to watch the whole freaking 4 hour live stream again just to make the index. So here's what I've got to ask. If any of you out there could, even if you're not going to watch the whole thing, if you do watch the whole thing, fantastic. If any of you out there could make notes with timestamps, and like when a question comes in, if you would just write down, 1 minute, 27 seconds, what's the best flight controller? If as you watch the live stream, if you feel like volunteering to help create that index, then you send it to me, email it to me or whatever after the live stream. I'll put that all together and put it in the video description, and I'll give you credit. The best thing would be if anybody watches the all 3 hours of the live stream. Thank you so much if you do that. If you create one big index, I'll definitely give you credit as sort of a community volunteer for helping with that. That would be really helpful to the other people who come after who can't watch it live. So I'm throwing it out. If anybody feels like doing that, go ahead. And if you don't feel like doing it, then you can hardly blame me for not wanting to do it either. Okay. Alrighty. We're going to start the live stream with just a little. I'm going to get directly to your questions, and you can see right here, I've got the chat right up here. And yeah, thanks. Mindman TV at 435. Can anyone please create timestamps? Lol. No, do it in a text file. Don't do it in the chat. That's not helpful. You don't see the timestamp while it's live. Is that right? I'm not looking at the live stream. I don't know about that. Then if that's the case, then you may need to go back and watch it again. But anyway, we'll move on. Yep. So here I got your questions up. I've also got the super chat up in case you don't know what super chat is. Right down here in the comments, if you click this little $sign here, at least it's a $sign for me, that gives you the opportunity to send me a couple bucks, make a direct contribution, and that's just a nice way of supporting me. Thank you so much if you choose to do that. But also, your question will get pulled out into this separate window, and I try to answer as many questions as I can, but obviously there's way too many questions for me to answer all of them, so I always make sure I get to the super chats. Obviously, you got to support the people who are contributing. And also, right here is my Patreon post where I've got some questions pulled out for people who are my patrons. And in case you don't know, hello, I'm back. Patreon is a website where you can support me for a few dollars a month. It's a monthly sort of regular income that I can count on, unlike other things which kind of ebb and flow. every month I know how much I'm getting from Patreon. It's very helpful. And if anybody out there, if you get value from my content and you choose to go to patreon.com and find me there, there should be a link down in the video description. Okay, so I'll be answering questions from my patrons as well. Let's see then. Here's where we're going to start. I always like to start these live streams while people are kind of rolling in with just a little bit of discussion of some products and other things that I haven't made a full video about. And I got to start this one with the HDO. So my video review of the Fatshark HDO came out, and it was mixed. Let's just say that it was mixed. And I kind of wanted to follow up on that and see what you guys think in the comments. Now, I've been looking at Facebook comments and other things, and I know there's a lot of people out there who agree with me about the 37-degree field of view not being big enough. Not being as, well, let's put it this way. 37 degrees is not as big as you would want from like a premium $500 goggle. It's certainly, by the time we get down to like 33 degrees, like the Attitudes, I feel like that's smaller than I prefer. But 37 is, I put them on, and I wish they were bigger, but it's flyable. And I got to say, I've been going back and forth on the image quality, and I confess that I'm not like hugely discerning when it comes to image quality. You know what I mean? Like I'm not this super ultra picky person. I've been putting the goggles back and forth. I did this yesterday, actually. I put the HDO on, I put the HD3 on, I put the HD2 on. And here's what I'll say. The place that the HDO really shines is in edge-to-edge sharpness. Like, you put the HD2s on your face with the 50-degree field of view, and if you just look in the upper left-hand corner, it's really sort of distorted. And I never notice that when I'm flying, and I really prefer, I've said before, I like the big field of view, but the HDOs are really clear from edge to edge. As far as the resolution goes, man, I don't think I can tell a difference between an 800 by 600 on the HD2 or 3 and the HDO, and that's probably just because I'm a heathen, but I've tried to find a difference and haven't. And as far as the color saturated, the HDO definitely is more saturated and has better colors. But for me, the field of view, I think, wins. But here's what I'll say, finishing it up. Let's see, I'm just looking at some of the comments. Here's what I'll say is I feel like part of the problem, if FlySight had released this exact same goggle at the exact same price, I would be thrilled. I would be like, wow, this is amazing. Good job, FlySight. But the problem is that, number one, we know Fatshark, some of these frustrating issues that haven't been addressed, you know, like where's the power switch, the DVR, all these things that Fatshark owners have been frustrated with for a while. We know Fatshark knows about these issues, and we know they can make a good goggle. So I think the standard is higher for Fatshark, to be honest. And that's why some of the big frustration came out in that review. So let's see what you guys are saying in the comment. OSD burn-in on your OLED screen. Unknown whether that's going to be an issue. OLEDs do have that issue. Whether it's is that going to be an issue on these if you have an OSD? We'll only know after years and years of flying them. Let's see. Any comments on the Elmway Commander V2? I think the Elmway Commander V2 is a very exciting goggle. Elmway, this is the V2 of the Commander. Obviously, you know what the Commander is, right? It's very exciting because the Elmway Commander V2 has a 45-degree field of view, 800 by 600 resolution. Does that sound familiar? That sounds just like the HD3. In fact, a person I was talking to in the industry, who I will leave unnamed, said he thought that the Elmway V2 actually had the same optics module as the HD3. I can't verify that, but so if that's true, that's really exciting because I think the HD3 is a really good goggle. I mean, especially for people who saw blurry edges on the HD2. And if there's, I think that spec is, for me, really the sweet spot, the 800 by 600 resolution and the 45-degree field of view. And here's the thing. I don't normally get excited about specs on a new goggle because I've seen so many of these goggles, like, well, I won't name names, but I've seen so many of these goggles come out with great specs. People get super hyped, and then the goggle comes out and it's kind of garbage. But the Commander V1 was a really solid goggle, and I feel like Elmway has demonstrated they can execute. I have high hopes for the Commander V2, although I haven't seen it yet. I will say, I asked my contact at Fatshark, I said, are you going to keep making the HD3? And he said yes. So if you like the HD3 better than the HDO, then they're not retiring the HD3, at least at this time. That's what they told me. And that's good, because if there were a world where the Commander V2 had a 45-degree field of view 800 by 600 screen, and the HDO had a 37-degree field of view 720 by whatever 950-something screen, I think that the HDO would, I think a lot of people would buy the Commander first. But between the Commander and the HD3, that's, I think, a much more interesting question. The Commander is going to have built-in receiver with diversity, whereas the HD3 is going to have a module bay. The HD3 is going to have, of course, Fatshark's reputation. Here's the thing with Fatshark. If you buy a Commander and 6 months down the line or a year down the line, let's say it's even out of warranty, if the Commander dies, where's the, this is a legit question. Where's the service center for Elmway? Where are you going to send it to get it fixed? I know for a fact that people with 3-year-old HD2s, heck, Dom V2s, they can get a hold of Fatshark and send it in, and Fatshark, if they have parts, will do their best to repair it, keep your goggles going. I think that's certainly something. So, a lot of people are also asking about the Eachine EV200, which is a goggle. It's the successor to the EV100, which in my opinion, the EV100 was a big disappointment. But we'll move on. The EV200 is very well anticipated, and the thing is, the EV200 has been getting pushed back and pushed back and pushed back. People are saying, when are you going to review it? No, but they're not shipping it. It's kind of feeling like vaporware at this point. So no one knows when the EV200 is really going to ship. So, one more thing. I got, well, I'm not going to get up to go get it. I got my LaForge V4 in the mail yesterday, and I got to say, the LaForge V4, one of the features that it has is that it puts the menu in the goggle screen. And I got to say, I mean, like, people who fly Sky Zones have been saying, yeah, OSD in the goggle. Isn't that the way you want it? And I've been like, yeah, but I like my modules, and I still like my modules. But wow, being able with the LaForge V4 to just push the button and see in the goggle what channel you're on, it's really nice. I'm really psyched about the LaForge V4. Okay. So RC Nova asks, is the HDO really that bad? I'm gonna move on from the HDOs and get to your questions, but that's the thing. Is the HDO really that bad? No. I said at the end of my video, it's a good goggle. It's a good goggle. It's just frustrating how Fatshark seems to so consistently almost get a perfect goggle, but then like, it's a 37-degree field of view. Why wasn't it bigger? Or, you still didn't do the fix the fan like we want. So the HDO is a good goggle. Personally, I still like the HD3 better, especially for $100 cheaper. But the HDO is not a bad goggle. It's just not the goggle that I wish Fatshark had made. And that just keeps seeming to happen. So that was the frustration that came out in the video. Not that the HDO is bad per se, but like, I've been talking to people who like, I talked to Ladrib yesterday, and he flies Sky Zones, and he loves the HDO. So it just, I think, depends a lot on where you're coming from. Okay. Let's move on to some other topic. Let me get a couple of questions coming into the super chat. What's a good black box logging rate? So when you're logging in Blackbox, you pick the logging rate. It's going to be the frequency at which it writes to the log. And there's two ways you can think about this. One is the Nyquist limit, which is the highest frequency that can be recorded accurately, is 1/2 of the logging rate. So for the kind of tuning that we're doing, especially with notch filters, the frequencies we're most interested in are around 300 to 600 hertz. Which means you need to be logging a minimum of, well, if you log at 1 kilohertz, then your Nyquist limit is going to be 500 hertz, which is not really high enough. So I think for tuning filters and stuff, minimum, I want to log at 2 kilohertz. That gets me data up to 1 kilohertz, which means I'm guaranteed to get all my motor frequencies and stuff. However, I will say this, if you're doing like me, and all you're doing is you want the stick overlay, like if you're just trying to get the stick overlay or something, then you can log at a much, much slower rate. So on some of my quads, they don't have an SD card reader. They just have a data flash chip. And at 2 kilohertz, it fills up pretty fast. So on some of my quads with a data flash chip, I'll set the logging rate to like 100 hertz or whatever the lowest value is. And that's good. That's not good enough for PID tuning or gyro tuning or any of that stuff, but it is good enough to get the stick overlay, and it makes them last a lot longer. Rogue One FPV asks, any news from ClearView? We haven't heard anything. ClearView, man, they got to get a social media manager or something, because they just don't seem to post. They don't seem to communicate well with their customers. I was hoping to have the new ClearView, the fixed ClearView module. So in case you guys don't know, the ClearView, Fatshark modules came out, and then I tested it and other people tested it, and they kind of didn't perform well. And then ClearView found a defect in the manufacturing process, and they basically have gone back to the factory and said, hey, make us a new one and make it right this time. So I was hoping to have the fixed ClearView module in time for the multi-GP qualifier, which was last weekend, and it didn't get here in time. ClearView has told me that they have the new module from the factory, and they are testing it to make sure that it's correct, like they should have done with the first module. Like and I don't want to beat them up, but at the same time, that people are like, how did you not detect this? How did you miss this in the first modules that you sent out? And it's a valid question. Why did it take YouTube reviewers like me and Steele to say, hey, this isn't performing right? I don't know the answer to that question, but they're really, really, really making sure that this new one that they got back from the factory is good. And I should have it in the next couple weeks, I think. So that tells you about where they are in terms of getting them out to customers. So there you go. Extra coffee money. Thank you, Pile of Carbon, for the extra coffee money. Joey Graves says, I run the Quantum Cyclops goggles now. Would you recommend upgrading to that style of goggle? So you guys in the comments can weigh in so that people like Joey Graves can see what you think. I personally love this style of goggle. I love how small and light it is on my face. I love how easy it is to transport. I really like the modules. I don't know why, just do. So, but many people who fly the head play style of goggles hate these goggles because the screens are so much smaller. The screen on like a head play goggle is so big. I actually just don't like that. So it's a matter of personal preference. You should just try them and see if you like them and see if the pros and cons are worth it to you. Okay, let's go now from the super chat over to the regular chat, and let's see what we got. And I'm just going to scroll back and try to find some questions here. Yeah, keep weighing in. Keep talking about your personal opinion in the chat of box goggles versus regular goggles, especially if you've switched from one to the other, and you could sort of weigh in. That'll be very useful. Let's see. Bill Revenaugh asks, is there such a thing as an optics module for us old guys who need readers in their goggles? I'm forced to use head plates with readers glued into them. Here's what I suggest, Bill. You can cut your own, by the way. If you're handy with a Dremel tool, you can get some readers. And the nice thing is that since they're readers and not prescription, it's not going to cost you much to try this. And if you screw it up, you're not out much. But you can actually just you can buy the Fatshark diopter set. It's about $20, and it's got some diopter inserts. You can kind of see mine are in here. I don't know if you can see. There's a little slide and insert there. The Fatshark diopter set is about $20. It comes with -2, 4, and 6 diopter. Those aren't what you want, but you basically just use those as a blank to cut out a reader and just sort of drill it down with a Dremel and grind it down till it fits. The other thing you can do is you can go to a company like RHO Lens, which I have a link to on my website, fpvknowitall.com. The ultimate FPV shopping list is my list of all the products that I recommend and things to help you kind of cut through the wheat from the chaff, if you will. And RHO Lens is there, and they do custom prescription inserts. Now, you're asking for readers, not a prescription insert, but I'll bet you that they could make you reader insert as well. I don't know if the problem is it's kind of expensive because it's a prescription. It's like $60 or $70 US, so it's a little bit much, but that's the answer, is to get a diopter insert that goes into the goggles, and that may help you. I tell you what, now I don't know if you can tell, I have really bad prescription. My prescription, if you know, is like -675 with astigmatism, and I've been for years I've been thinking about doing LASIK. And I just go back and every time I have to buy new goggles, glasses. You can see my glasses are super scratched up, and don't use a string trimmer while wearing your glasses. Rocks just bad. Every time I have to buy new glasses, I think about getting LASIK instead, and I just end up going, it's not worth it, and I get glasses. But I have such a bad prescription, and now every time I have new goggles and I have to put the inserts in, I'm like, oh, I should do that, but I don't know if I will. Should we always update to the newest Betaflight when it comes out as a stable version? So what your concern there is that it'll wipe out your factory config. And that's a valid concern. If you've got a quad like that came like a ready to fly that came from the factory with a custom config, then you should always dump it out and save that config before you upgrade to a new version of Betaflight. And what you do is you just go into the command line, then you type diff all, and you hit enter, and you save that output to a text file, and that's your backup of your configuration. Some people also screenshot the actual config pages, especially the ports tab, to help you remember which resource is on which port. And then you flash to the newest version, and when it wipes it out, then you're good. You can put your PIDs back, you can put everything back the way it was. Let's see here. What do we got? F.Port setup not working. Any clues to get it working? IB droning asks, F.Port setup is not working. Here's my guess, IB droning. If you're using an F4 board, you have to use a pad with a bidirectional inverter to get F.Port working. And the pad that's guaranteed to always have a bidirectional inverter on an F4 is the SmartPort pad, the SmartPort telemetry pad. SmartPort also needs a bidirectional inverter. So if your flight controller has a SmartPort pad or a telemetry pad that's named different things, that's the pad you should try to get F.Port working on. That's my suggestion. Let's see here. Going back through the questions here. What are my thoughts on the SP Racing F7 dual flight controller? That's a really interesting question, RC Nova. So the SP, by the way, I am super impressed with Dominic Clifton. He is Mr. Clean Flight. He's the developer of CleanFlight, the primary developer, and he's the developer of the SP Racing product line. And there's a thing that happens in the open source community where a certain project is big for a while, and then it gets forked, and another project kind of gets big. And like look at Baseflight. Anybody fly Baseflight anymore? No. The older project kind of fades into obscurity. And when Betaflight got really big, there was some, you might well wonder if CleanFlight was kind of on the way out. And I do think that not as many people fly CleanFlight as used to. Many people fly Betaflight now, but Dominic keeps staying relevant. He has just released his new SP Racing flight controller, and it has some amazing features that are really impressive and innovative. I'm super psyched that, I mean, he's really just, he hasn't gone, well, I guess that's it for me. No, he's continuing to push things. And one of the things his flight controller has is dual gyros. Now, you may be aware that there are some flight controllers out there. There's an Airbot flight controller that has both an MPU 6000 and an ICM 2682 gyro, I think it is. Both of those gyros. The ICM gyro can do 32K sampling. The MPU 6000 gyro does not do 32K sampling, but it's more vibration noise resistant. But the thing is, with that Airbot flight controller, you basically go to the command line and you pick one or the other gyro. It's basically just for testing purposes. You can try it out. It doesn't do them both. There's a technique you can use if you have multiple gyro chips on a board where the data from the gyro chips is like, what's the word they use for it? I'm sorry, I'm blanking on the word they use for it. But basically the data from the two gyro chips is combined such that you get a better noise, you get better data, essentially. It basically increases the signal to noise ratio, and that's what he's doing, and it's super exciting. I think it suggests that it should make his flight controller more noise resistant, so it should allow for like the 32K sampling that we want from the ICM gyros without the noise issues right? Kind of a best of both worlds scenario. Whether that actually pans out in real life remains to be seen, but it's great that he's actually doing something like that. Let's see. Christian Shepherd over in the super chat asks, what's your favorite food? You know, I got to go with, this week I got to go with Tom Kha Gai soup, the Thai chicken coconut soup. We had some of that when I was in Houston. We just went to a Thai restaurant. And I have to say, every time I eat that, I think if I had to pick one food to eat for the rest of my life, that might be it. So that's the answer. Toddzilla 151 FPV asks, when do we get the JB all-in-one ESC to match the JB flight controller? I don't know. What do you think? You think I should? I mean, I only want to really put out products if I'm adding some value. I don't want to just slap my name on an existing product. But then at the same time, I think there's some value to curating products. Now, I do that with the FPV, Ultimate FPV shopping list at my website, fpvknowitall.com. But in a sense, putting my name on products is also curating the product. And I've been thinking about this as I've been working with the Rotor Riot guys, doing the quad camps and shooting Rotor Riot episodes. And, you know, Rotor Riot has products like the Hype Train motors, which they sort of work with vendor to OEM. They also have products like their batteries, like the practice battery. And that practice battery is basically just a rebadge of another battery. If you pay attention, you could probably figure out who it was. And some people say, well, what are you doing? You just slap your name on something. But if what you've done is you've created a brand that people trust, and then you go, okay, this is a good product. You can trust that it's a good product, and I'm going to tell you that by putting my name on it. Maybe there's some value there. So maybe if I were to take an ESC design, and I'm not going to invent anything new in the world of ESCs, but of just saying, hey, this is a good one to use with my flight controller, maybe there's some value to that. I don't know. I'll think about it. Viper FPV asks, what camera do you recommend for bench reviews? I use the Panasonic Lumix G85. You can see it over there behind me. I don't know if you can't. Yeah, there it is. Lumix G85. It's a micro 4/3 camera. I got it because I also use it for like vloggy style stuff in the field, and I wanted something small and light. There are various arguments you could get into as to whether micro 4/3 is the best, but that's the one I use, the Lumix G85. The only thing about the Lumix I'll say is the image stabilization is great. The image quality is very good. It makes very good looking images. The autofocus is garbage. Right? Basically, I almost always use it with manual focus, except when I'm in the field. In the field, if you use it with face tracking, it's okay. But if somebody's wearing sunglasses or something, it's going to not track the face, and then the focus is going to be just constantly hunting. It's pretty bad. So, there you go. Let's go back over to the regular chat. Low Key Camo asks, do you have a favorite flight controller for Butterflight? Listen, guys, if you're going to run Butterflight, if you're doing a new build and you want to run Butterflight, you got to run the Helio Spring, right? That's the flight controller designed specifically for Butterflight. And I shot this footage over a week ago, and I just haven't gotten around to editing it. So I apologize to the guys over at Helio. I have a review of the Helio Spring that I did with my buddy, a random FPV. And here's the gist of what I came to. It can run 32K gyro, 32K PID loop with all the filtering active at like 40% processor utilization. So if you're interested in that kind of thing, no other flight controller can let you do that. And you know that the Butterflight devs are going to be coming up with new stuff that other flight controllers won't be able to do because they're targeting the Helio Spring. So if you're just a Butterflight fan, I mean, if you turn that volume down. If you have another quad and you want to try Butterflight on it, go for it. But if you're building a quad specifically for Butterflight, you got to put the Helio Spring on it. That's you know, peanut butter and chocolate, right? So that's the best one, I would say. Let's see. Oops, sorry. Gonum, how do you clean your quads? I feel like it's very hard to get rid of cut grass that sticks to anything. I don't clean my quads. I clean the camera lens. That's how I clean it. Maybe a little bit of this. I clean the camera lens. When there's dirt in the motors, I take a prop and I just kind of go and then I spin the motors, and that pushes the dirt out. Don't do that, by the way. If you've gotten into something abrasive like sand, then don't spin the motors, because the sand will get in there and it'll grind things up. But for your typical kind of just like dirt, clay, mud, whatever, just spin the motors, push it out. And I never clean my quads at all. I just don't care. That's the answer. Corey Tidrick, last I heard, the Hero Session has been discontinued. Have you heard anything from Runcam about a possible re-release of the Runcam 3? So, hey guys, and if you didn't hear, I'm very sorry to tell you, it seems like it's all but confirmed that the Hero Session 5, it's been discontinued. They're not making any more of them. If you want it, buy it now. I actually bought a few extras because I just want, they're so good for FPV. But then the question people are asking is, what next? And so like the one that I think of first, so GoPro's not going to make another in the Session form factor. That's what they've said. So there's the Foxeer box, which is the closest thing on the market right now to the Session form factor. But the Foxeer box is a pretty good camera, but the problem I have with it, number one, is it doesn't do proper super view. It has a sort of a stretch, but it's not a super view, is a dynamic stretch where the center of the image is not stretched and the outside is stretched. So things don't look super distorted exactly. I like super view a lot. So the Foxeer box doesn't have super view, but otherwise it's a pretty good camera. Oh, it doesn't have Pro Tune. A lot of people aren't going to use Pro Tune anyway. I think if I had to move on from the Session today, I would pick the Foxeer box and I would use something like Adobe After Effects to do super view in post. That's not going to be an answer for everybody. But the question you actually asked is Runcam going to re-release the Runcam 3 now that GoPro has dropped the form factor? I haven't heard anything about that from Runcam, and I'm not sure there's no guarantee that GoPro would let them. The whole reason the Runcam 3 was discontinued is because GoPro said that it was infringing on some kind of a design patent. Nobody knows exactly what the aspect of it, what was infringing was, but I don't think they're going to bring it back. I think they've moved on. It's unfortunate. It was a good product and a good price, so I think I would. I think if you had to get a replacement for the Session today, it would be a Foxeer box. What do you guys think? What's the best camera today to replace the Session 5 once you break all your Sessions that you have right now? Okay. Have I flown a Hero 6? Yeah, I have flown a Hero 6. Hero 6 is a great camera, but here's the two things I don't like about it. Number one, it's heavy. It's so heavy compared to a Session form factor. It flies okay. You can get it going, but it's just a lot of weight to add. And it's expensive. It's like what is it, $500 or something, $600. It's probably come down. And so and the back screen is more likely to crack if the battery smashes into it. It's just a worse camera for FPV unless you want to do like 240 frames per second, unless you want to do 4K, those things that the Session 6 can do that the Hero 6 can do that the Session 5 can't, then it's okay. But I would never put that much weight on purpose if I could avoid it. No, Lightning Stalker, they are not releasing a Session 6. I'm saying that based on an interview I saw with like the CEO of GoPro, and he basically said there's no money in the Session form factor. It's just not financially viable. He as much as said it's dead, it's gone. So Roee Mazor asked, what's the difference infringement-wise between Foxeer and Runcam? That is a very interesting question. No one knows. No one, as far as I know, no one knows definitively which exact element of the Runcam's design was deemed to be by GoPro infringing. My guess is some people think it's the shape. I'm not sure about that. People have said if the Runcam is infringing, then how can the Session be original? Because the Panasonic Cube was the first sort of cube-shaped camera. But other people have said that GoPro has actually licensed that patent from Polaroid. I don't know if that's true. And my guess is that maybe it has to do with the power button. The power button on the GoPro Session is also auto records. And if you look at the Foxeer box, it doesn't do that. It has a separate power and record button, whereas the Runcam 3 had that same function. That is my guess as to what was infringing, but it's just a guess. Oh, JTan163 is saying that the Runcam issue was the button interface. You're agreeing with my guess. Yeah, that was my guess because that was the difference between the two. Let's see here. Taylor Basinger asks, how often do you crash into and get stuck in the trees next to your driveway? So far, I haven't gotten stuck in the trees so high that I couldn't just reach up and grab it out, like in the very tippy top. So not yet. Quad camp is at my house this weekend. We're having a quad camp at my house this weekend. It's sold out, so, you know, not trying to sell you tickets. But I'm guessing that we're going to get at least one quad stuck in those trees because people who have not flown my house before, it's a little bit challenging to figure out wherever all the lines are. I know them, of course. I know them a little too well, frankly. It probably gets a little boring, but I'm guessing we're going to have trees and quads and trees this weekend. So, license to drive. Should I buy a couple Session 5s before they disappear? That's on you, man. It's your money. Some of the people I know have said, well, it's just time to move on. I'm not going to try and desperately cling to the past by buying Session 5s today. Other people are just like, I'm going to buy as many as I can afford. All right, moving on from the session. Let's see here. Can you add ready-to-fly quads to your ultimate FPV shopping list? Asks Julio D. No, I can't. And the reason for that is that I'm not happy with ready-to-fly quads customer service, which is basically non-existent. So many people tell me stories, and I've experienced this personally. By the way, so many people order from Ready to Fly Quads and have no problem and get great product at a good price. It has to be acknowledged. But so many people, and in my opinion, an unacceptably high number of people, have an issue, and then it seems like he just doesn't answer emails, doesn't answer questions, and it's just not something I feel like supporting. So I don't go out of my way to promote Ready to Fly Quads. And if you've wondered why, that's basically why. And I got to admit, it's a little bit of a personal thing because way back when I was getting into the hobby, Flight Test did a video partnering with Ready to Fly Quads, and they said, oh, here's this guy, and I ordered from him as a result of that. And then my order didn't come, and months later, I ended up just canceling it, and I got my money back from PayPal, but I was so annoyed that I tried emailing, phone calling, all these things, and never got an answer, and just was left in limbo on one of my earliest orders when I was trying to build a quad, and I just don't want to promote a company that would put one of you guys potentially in that same situation. I'm still a little bit mad at Flight Test for putting that video out. It's not a big deal, but like on some level, I'm just still carry that grudge, and I don't want one of you guys to feel that way about me, and that's why I don't necessarily go out of my way to promote them. So, no, not $500. Kraken King. That's SEK. That's SEK $500. That's like Swedish kroner. It's not $500. It's much less than that. But thank you anyway. Christian Shepard asks in the super chat, do you 3D print? And if not, where do you get your prints from? I do not 3D print. And the reason I would love to have a 3D printer. I just don't have time to get a 3D printing is this. I mean, it's more and more today. You can just buy a 3D printer and get it working. But it really still takes a little bit of tweaking to get them working their best. And I just don't have the time to get into that as a hobby. So I get my 3D prints from a local guy who has a 3D printer, and I just say, hey, can you print this for me? And then eventually I get it from him. I like to, when I do order from the internet, Great 3D is fantastic. Thingiverse is good. I think they can print them, but Shapeways, those are some sites I go to. The problem is buying 3D prints off the internet is so expensive. You'll pay $12 for a GoPro session case or something, plus $7 shipping. You'll end up paying $20 for a print that somebody local could do for like 50 cents in filament, and, you know, maybe give them $5 if you want to thank them for their time. You know, so find a local guy who has a 3D printer. He will probably be happy to print you almost anything you want because 3D printing guys just like printing things. So that's what I would say. Calvin Erickson asks, I have a Seal Racing F4S flight controller and a Spektrum serial racing telemetry receiver. I can't get telemetry working. Any advice? I know the answer. The reason you can't get it working is because you have probably wired telemetry to the telemetry pad on the CL Racing F4, and that has an inverter. But the Spektrum telemetry is not inverted. You need to use the RX4 or RX6 pad, not the telemetry pad. That's the answer. Ooh, I got one. eDrone asks in the super chat, how do you feel about overclocking flight controllers? What's the highest CPU percentage you feel comfortable at flying? I feel like about 50% is the line for me. Much above, if it was at 53%, I'd probably be okay. But much above 50%, I don't like it. And overclocking is fine, but the problem is if it's very hot out, the flight controller can overheat, and then it'll lock up and shut down. So, but I mean, I feel like 192 megahertz overclock is pretty much fine for everywhere, unless you're flying in Dubai in the summer or something. At the higher levels of overclocking, many boards won't be able to handle it and will have issues. So, let's see. Can you use Molten Eagle in the regular chat asks, can you use a BL Heli 32 telemetry pad to send the current value instead of telemetry? And if you want to know more about current sensing, I just this morning released a video about how to set up current sensing on your flight controller. Very useful to know the amps and milliamp hours that are being pulled. So check that out over on my channel. The answer to that is no. Analog current sense and telemetry are not interchangeable, and you cannot do that. So that's the answer. Let me go over to the Patreon page because I'm sure my patrons are asking questions over there, and I definitely go, oh, yeah, there's a ton of them. So let me try and clear out some of those. Oh, gosh, yeah, 30 questions. We'll see about that. Pardon me. Matthew Neal asks, I really struggle to maintain altitude control. What tips can you recommend? Matthew, unfortunately, the answer to that is just practice. Pardon me. The answer to that is just practice. Especially as a beginner, altitude control, throttle management is very, very difficult. You can add Expo to the throttle in Betaflight, and that'll help a little bit. But honestly, you should probably just practice. Simulator practice is good. The one place I would say that Expo can be really helpful is if you have especially micro quads can have a really high thrust to weight ratio. If your quad hovers at like 25 or 30% throttle, then that can be really challenging even for a beginner, and you might want to consider adding some throttle expo in Betaflight. That's the answer. Michael Bengtson asks, is it possible to connect the current readout from the DAL-RC engine to your flight controller JBF4 AIO? And the answer to that is no. My flight controller does not have an input for an external analog current sensor. It only has input for ESC telemetry. So no, you can't do that. The real answer is if you were really good with a soldering iron and a hot air gun, you could actually disconnect the shunt resistor or disable it. You'd have to, I don't know how you would do it. You could basically disconnect the shunt resistor from the flight controller processor, and you could solder the input to the pin on the processor, and you could make it work, but that's going to be beyond most people. Charles Cole asks, good set of motors, both durable and performance. That's tough. Obviously, you can spend a lot of money and get good motors, but that's probably not what you're asking. I just recently got done editing my 2207 versus 2306 motor shootout, and so those are the RCX NK 2306 and 2207 motors. If you go and let me show you what I'm talking about. Hang on one second. So these are the motors I'm talking about, and I don't have any affiliate relationship with them. I've flown these motors way back since when I was just getting into the hobby. Obviously not the 2306s, they didn't exist, but RCX motors, and I've always thought they're very good performance for the money. Now you may be looking at this and saying, well, that's an $18 motor. That's not actually that cheap. But what you do is you just choose no warranty and support, and it takes them down to $15, which I think is a really good price for these motors. They're not the smoothest in the world. They're reasonably durable. It does have Japan EZO bearing, but I don't know why. They're not the smoothest in the world. They're pretty powerful. They compare well to more expensive motors just in terms of raw thrust output, and I think they're a pretty good budget choice. You can find cheaper motors for like $8 or $9, but I think you really give up a lot in terms of quality. And I think these are a pretty good balance. So that's, I guess, what I would suggest. And I would say between the two, and I'm going to kind of spoil my upcoming video, 2306 versus 2207. Between the two, I really like the 2207 better, which surprised the hell out of me because I honestly expected the difference to be pretty subtle. But actually, the minute I flew the 2207, I was like, oh, this is way better. So I would say check out the RCX NK2207 2400 kV. Ron DeLeos asks, I have a lead on a Fatshark HD2. I know you said you would snag him up, but what if I would like to primarily fly 16:9 analog? Yeah, the Fatshark HD2 do not have the ability to letterbox a 16:9 screen. So the Dom V3 would be a good choice, or the HD3 can do letterboxing. And if you've already got an HD3, I don't know why you would give it up. It can, the Dom V3, can it letterbox analog or only HDMI? Ooh, I'm not sure about that. Well, I mean, if you fly 16:9s, I would want a goggle with a 16:9 screen. So that's what I would say. I see over here, is there anything special you need to do to get SmartPort telemetry working on soft serial? Yes, soft serial automatically detects inverted. You don't need to do anything. And in fact, there are some quads that I have that have a UART spare. Hang on, I'm going to sneeze. Hold on. Pardon me. There are some quads that I have that have a hardware UART spare, and I use soft serial anyway just because I don't want to deal with inversion. Soft serial automatically handles the inversion issue. Let's see here. Betaflight barometer tuning video, please. Asks LA Hover. No, just not my thing. I'm sorry. Betaflight has never been great. CleanFlight, friggin' multi-wii, has never been good at altitude hold with just the barometer. If you want to do something like that, you need to have a GPS on board in addition to the barometer, in my opinion, and you need to be running something like iNav, which is really tuned for that kind of thing. So I want to let you know that's not going to happen. Let's see here. And guys, I see the questions coming in. It kills me that I can't answer all of them, but it's just I'm just doing my best to get to as many as I can. So Matthew Hegeman asks, I got your flight controller, love it. Was it supposed to come with a paper manual or just the PDF? Just the PDF. We don't print the paper manual. It would cost a lot of money, it'd kill a lot of trees, and even the postage would be a lot higher if we shipped it with a big, it's like 30 pages, right? So we don't ship it with a paper manual. You can print it out, take it down to your local Kinko's if you really want a printed manual. Most people are just going to work off the PDF though. When I activate turtle mode on my quad, asks Circuit Dreamer, the props spin regular direction instead of reversed. The answer to that is that your ESCs don't support DSHOT commands, or if you know for a fact your ESCs support DSHOT commands, then like they're not reading the DSHOT command. So for example, if the ESC, if you're running DSHOT 600 but the ESC only supports DSHOT 300, then sometimes the motors will just barely spin and the quad will fly, but when you try and do DSHOT commands, the motors won't reverse. That's the answer to that. Let's see. Will you be reviewing the Helio Spring FC, or did I miss that video, asks Ron DeLeos. Yes, I will be reviewing it. I have the video shot. I just have to edit it. And that's, I feel so bad because there are so many topics I want to cover, and I put out basically 5 or 6 videos a week, which is as many as I possibly can. And still, I feel like there's stuff I shoot and it sits on my hard drive for a month before I get the video out. But I'm just so busy doing a million other things. But the Helio Spring editing is near the top of my list at this moment. It will be coming out in the next couple weeks. True X or Stretch X for freestyle, and why? You know, interestingly, when I was in Houston with Rotor Riot for Quad Camp, we sat down and we shot a round table with Stinger Swarm, with Alex Vanover, and with Anub, Zachary Thayer, who are racing and freestyle pilots, and we talked about those exact racing versus freestyle. And I don't know when that video will be released, but look forward to that. We talked for like an hour and 15 minutes. They'll probably cut it down to 20 minutes. But for freestyle, the short answer is I prefer True X, because Stretched X will almost always have props in the camera, and I don't like that. And True X is more neutral and consistent on pitch and roll, whereas StretchDex has different handling characteristics on pitch than roll. RC DIY, I have not had the X-Lite in my hands. However, I've seen some pictures going around Facebook. The X-Lite is the new transmitter from FrSky, which is kind of like a gamepad looking thing. I've seen some pictures going around Facebook from someone who saw it at the hobby show in Hong Kong or wherever. It is so much tinier than you imagined. Like, I imagined it being like this big. It's like the size of an Xbox controller. It's way smaller. I think a lot of people are going to be surprised by it. Frank asks, regarding the new Fatshark goggles, I heard that OLED have a shorter lifespan than LEDs. What are your thoughts on that? Or I think you mean LCD, which I know because I said LED in my video by accident and people corrected me. OLED do have a shorter life. I can confirm that the OLED screen used in the HDOs, it's a Sony screen. Fatshark told me that, and I got permission to share it. It's not like a secret. So it's a high quality screen. And presumably Fatshark has thought about, they'll have a rated lifespan before the brightness dims to a certain point. Presumably Fatshark has thought about that. We won't know until 2 years from now when people start saying, oh, my screen is still good, or they're saying, oh, my screen sucks. Bradley Parsons, what's your favorite micro drone? I hesitate to answer this question because there's so many good ones out there I haven't flown, like the Leader. The Leader 120, people tell me, is very, very good. The whole Leader line is supposed to be very good at a very good price. The X-Hover Wind 2, Drew was flying one in Houston and loving it. Although, as you saw in my vlog, he was also a little frustrated with some of the things that come with micros. I think my favorite micro drone right now is probably the Baby Hawk R. And I picked that over the GTR 90 because the GTR 90 is better spec'd, especially it has VTX remote control, which I like a lot. But the Baby Hawk R, especially with the 2.5 inch or the 3 inch arms, is an absolute beast. The other one that I'm looking forward to trying right now is, I've got it back on the wall there, I don't think you can see it, is the massive droner from Catalyst Machine Works. Neil Whiteley from Catalyst Machine Works gave me one of those while we were out at Quad Camp in Houston, and I flew like 2 packs on his, and for a 3 inch, wow, 3 inch has really come a long way. Like, I'm not saying that you would not be able to tell it was a 3 inch, like it's not quite on the par with a 5 inch, but wow, it is really impressive. So there you go. Let's see. Why doesn't Fatshark make the HD2 anymore? Asks MF Boom. And the answer to that, I think, is, well, number one, a lot of people didn't like the blurry edges of the screen on the HD2. It was really hard to get your eye in exactly the right spot so that you didn't have blurry edges of the screens. But number two, Fatshark, I think that these optic modules that they use, I don't think that they're manufactured for Fatshark so much as Fatshark goes to a manufacturer and says, hey, what are we going to get from your product line? And I'm guessing that those modules maybe are not available, but I don't know about that. My real answer is that probably market forces, that the HD2, the big screen on the HD2, just so many people had problems with it. And that's why the HD3 had the smaller field of view. Which question did I miss? Joe Kunsch, Nick's question. Who did I miss? Nick? He paid me for it. I'm looking back in the super chat. I don't see anybody named Nick. Who did I miss, Joe? If I miss you, I'm sorry. Oh, there's Nick. No, I just haven't got there yet. I mean, they're getting so many questions. I can't. I get them. I got questions from an hour ago over on my Patreon that I'm still trying to get to. So, yeah, I'll get there. Don't worry. Let me get Nick's question. Before Nick, though, Viper FPV says, I'm a fellow YouTuber with 400 plus subs. Any advice? Here's my advice. Number one, if you're at 400 subs, you're well on your way. Okay, you're doing good. What you want to look at is the number of subs per month that you're getting. You're like your 28-day sub count, and you want to see the higher that is, the better. If you're getting, a few hundred subs a month, then it's going to keep growing. The number one advice I have for anybody who is trying to get into YouTube is make content that you want to make, post regularly. And by regularly, I mean, like, you got to be posting like 3 times a week minimum if you're trying to break through. I'm not a YouTube expert, but that's just, it seems like YouTube really favors people who post more often. And if you're doing some like hour-long documentary, then maybe posting once every 3 months. You know, there's guys like CP Gray who do these really high production value. That's a lot of work to make the videos, and they post less often. But for your average YouTuber who's like trying to break through, you got to post a lot. And you got to figure out what kind of content you want to make that is going to help people solve problems, in my opinion. If you want to entertain people, I think it's really hard to break through because so many people are like out there trying to entertain. But if you answer questions, if you help people solve problems at least a little bit while you're entertaining, it'll make a big deal. But post regularly and post often. That's the number one thing I'd say. Nick Hessen asks, is PID tuning of yesterday being replaced by filter tuning of today? 16 months in the hobby. I've done more with filters than PIDs. I agree that PID tuning is way, way, way less important than it used to be. You used to have to struggle with your PIDs to get a good flying quad. And you would probably be surprised, since I'm known as Mr. PID Tuning, you'd probably be surprised to know how many of my quads are flying default PIDs. So many times I'll build a quad for a build or as a test to test out a piece of equipment. And when I go fly it on the default PIDs, it flies pretty good. And if it's not one of my like 2 or 3 main quads that I use for like making freestyle videos or for racing when I race, I'm not even going to bother PID tuning it. They fly so good. And that's because the PID controllers have gotten way better. Not just the flight control hardware, but also the software more so, I think, has gotten way better. Default PIDs fly so good. They don't fly perfect, but you don't have to spend as much time PID tuning. I think PID tuning is almost more about looking for a certain feel rather than a certain flight characteristic. Tuning filters to try and... The reason we're spending so much time tuning filters is because now the default PIDs give us 85% of a good tune to start with, and that last 15% we have to really struggle to get to 100%. And so the filter tuning is where we get that last 5 or 10 or 15%. Double A asked, on the wiring from the 4-in-1 to the flight control shunt, is the shunt directional? And if so, how do I know which way to go into the shunt and out to the 4-in-1? That is a very good question. So what we're talking about here is the shunt resistor right here. And you're asking, is it directional? And the answer to that is yes. Yes. You need positive to be on the positive leg, and the 4-in-1 ESC needs to be on the negative leg, which is the load. If you look up the manual, go to the Race Day Quads page for my flight controller, download my manual, and I've got wiring diagrams there. Let's see here. Go back to the regular chat. I've cleared out the super chat. I still have patron questions. Oh my gosh, from an hour ago. But I'm going to get some regular chat for you guys because I always want to answer. I don't want to just answer questions from people who give me money. Oh, it just makes me feel dirty. Would you recommend the ISDT parallel board? Because unfortunately, mine isn't available in the EU. I'm not 100% sure mine isn't available in the EU. I'd have to check on that. You may want to ask Ready-Made RC if there are any EU distributors. By the way, you guys in the EU, I got nothing. I would love, obviously, to have you guys buy my board locally. The problem is that people are like, well, why don't you get someone to carry it? I'm like, all you have to do is meet the minimum order quantity, and we'll send you some. The problem is that the same import tax that you would pay when you order from Ready-Made RC, the retailer has to pay that when they import it. It doesn't matter. They don't get out of it. So nobody's willing to do it because it's just too expensive, and that's the unfortunate thing. The ISDT board is a very good board, but wow, it's like 40 or 50 bucks or something, and it's got all these crazy safety features. Frankly, if I wasn't going to buy my board, I would spend like 15 bucks on a cheap parallel board from Banggood and just be really careful not to plug it in backwards or screw it up. That is not the right answer for everybody because some people are not up to the challenge of not plugging it in wrong, and you're going to burn your house down. But for me personally, I would just buy it. If I weren't going to buy my own board, which is clearly the best, I would just buy a cheap one from Banggood for 15 bucks and use it. I would not. The ISDT board to me seems like it's overpriced. I mean, it's not overpriced for what it is. It's just not. It's more than what I want. Let's see. Do VTX usually run hot? Asks Mop the Spill. You know, that's the kind of question that some of you guys are rolling your eyes that I chose to answer that question instead of some of the other questions. But that is actually a question that many, many people just getting into the hobby worry about, and that's why I'm taking it. VTX always run hot. Some of them run so hot you could burn your finger if you touched them. That's fairly normal. It helps if they have a little bit of a heat sink. And the key thing is that you don't want to leave your VTX powered on for too long while the props are not spinning. So if you're going to be plugged in on the bench, maybe unplug your VTX if you can, or turn it down from 800 milliwatts to 25 milliwatts, or put it into pit mode if you can. But they normally get hot, and oftentimes what happens is the props are spinning, they're blowing air, it cools down. So that's it. Let's see. Have I ever tuned a large 500 millimeter or bigger quad? And if so, how was it different? I tuned, my very first quad was a Flight Test Electro Hub, which was 9-inch props. I bet that was that more than 500? I bet it was more than 500 millimeters. It was different because I was tuning it using multi-wii. So a lot has changed. License to Drive says that Hobby RC in the UK sells my parallel charge board. So that's it. All right. What prop should I use on my 5-inch for chasing RC planes? It's hard to keep up with Cyclone T5046C. So I think your issue there, Michael Bainey, is that you need top speed to keep up with the plane, and a quad is not optimally designed for top speed because it's not very aerodynamic. You might want to look at something like the Emax Avon S prop, which is a 2-blade prop specifically designed for high-speed runs. And then you're also going to want to think about aerodynamics. Make your quad as light and as low drag as possible. And I think a higher kV motor and higher voltage are going to make a difference for you. Going from 4S to 6S probably is going to make a big difference. But if you're specifically asking about prop, look at a 2-blade prop with an aggressive pitch, something like a Dow Cyclone 5050 2-blade, or maybe the Avon S, which is, specifically designed for speed runs. What about the SkyZone Skyo 3? Julio Pizzetti asks, or Julio, depending on where country you're from. Skyo 3 is a great goggle, and I haven't heard any more about the recall they did to fix the faceplate. Once they fix the faceplate to fit Western faces better, if you have a sort of Asian-shaped face, if that means anything, let me go this way. If the Skyo 3 as it currently exists fits your face well, it's a pretty good goggle. It's still up in that $400, $500 price range, so it's got some competition, but a lot of people, the SkyZone Skyo 3 is going to be the goggle they like the best. If you have a more curved face and it doesn't fit you well, then we're still waiting for the recall. Let's see. Do I own a lipo safe like the Bat Safe? Jacob JFPV asks. I do have a Bat Safe over in my battery test station. I don't actually charge, as you can see back there, I don't actually charge in the Bat Safe most of the time. That is a risk that I take, and it's definitely a risk. Go watch Paul Nurkala's recent video where he overcharged a battery and it exploded. It's super dramatic when a lipo goes off. I never charge unattended. I always am in the room with the batteries when I'm charging them. And the other thing, the thing I do is usually a battery will give you a warning, like it'll start to hiss or crackle or crinkle or puff or get hot. So I'm always sort of babying and mother henning the batteries while they're charging, but it's a risk that I'm taking, and it would be better if I didn't. But I mean, I parallel charge, and I charge 15, 20 packs at a time. So that won't really fit in the Bat Safe is, my justification. But the Bat Safe is a great product. Most people, I'm a professional. I don't know. I have a lipo fire next week. I'm going to look real dumb today. So, yeah, that's a risk I guess I'm taking right now. I try to be careful, and I try and know the risks and work around them. Here's the thing, though. From selling my parallel charge board, I know that many of you do not know how to parallel charge safely. No offense, but many people out there should not use a parallel charge board because you don't know how to do it safely. And that's not an insult. It's just, if I gave you the controls of an airplane and said, "Here, land this plane," you'd be like, "I don't know how to land a plane. I'm gonna die." Well, that's kind of what parallel charging is like. If you don't know how to do it safely, just don't do it, because you burn your house down, and you should have a Bat Safe. Okay, I'm going back to the patron questions because I'm getting so behind on them. And by the way, patrons, if you're watching, if I don't get to your question here, I've skipped a few for reasons. I'll get back to I'll answer them in the actual patron forum if I don't get to them here in the live stream. So I'll get to you one way or the other. Now that long range is getting more popular, asks Robert Seegers, what are good long-range flight control options and considerations? Interesting that you ask that. I just saw on Facebook that Maytech has a new flight controller specifically for flying wings. That's really exciting. It has servo outputs, and it's designed for use with iNav, which are really exciting. The other flight controller that people seem to use, the Omnibus line. And what I did when I was thinking about, I've been thinking about doing an iNav build for months. And what I did is I went over to the iNav site. Hang on, I'll show you guys. I'll do this. We'll do this together. So what I do is I just do iNav. I just Google iNav, and I go to the GitHub page. And then what I do is they actually have recommendations for, here we go, many flight control supported boards. They have recommendations for what boards you should use, and I just picked one of those. See? So it says all these boards are tested by a development team, flown on a daily basis. Great. Omnibus F4, got it, done. There you go. So that's how I pick a board for like an iNav or a long-range build, is I just go with what they recommend. If you wanted an F7, well, I don't see any F7s on here, but I'm pretty sure the Maytech boards are supported by iNav because I know most of the Maytech boards use the same target as each other, and I think they would be supported. So there you go. Jason Benassi asks, what is your opinion of the new Holy Bro stuff, especially the Teco 32-bit ESC? Hang on. What you're talking about is this. You're talking about this. This is the Holy Bro Tecos 4-in-1 ESC. It is a 4-in-1 ESC. And actually, what I really want to show you is, I want to show you the stack. Yeah. So this is a pretty cool product. Look at this. Is this the Tecos? Yeah, this is a BL Heli 32. I can't use my mouse because it zooms in. It's a BL Heli 32 ESC with the Kakute F4 flight controller and the Atlatl video transmitter all on top for $90. If you're looking to do a quick and dirty build where you don't have to do a lot of soldering, I really think this is a good choice. And I don't know why Holy Bro doesn't get more credit. They don't seem to be as popular as I kind of feel like they ought to be for making, like, well, this is a really good product. The weakest part of this, in my opinion, is the video transmitter. It only works with VTX remote control. It has a push button, but the only thing the push button does is it like changes just the output power, but not the channel. But so I mean, there are better video transmitters out there, and I've had a couple people say, "Oh, my Atlatl died on me, and Holy Bro sent me a new one." So I don't know if that's just cherry picking or what, but overall, I think $90 for a BL Heli 32 ESC, F4 flight controller, soft mounted gyro, and a video transmitter, all soldered up and ready to go. Basically, just solder up your motors, your receiver, and go. Your camera. I think that's pretty interesting. So yeah, there you go. Can 4-in-1 ESCs? Colisman asks, can 4-in-1 ESC really deliver enough amps on that little board? Yeah, absolutely. Don't worry about that. Those boards can handle more current than you really think. So I don't know about that. And I got to tell you, I always pay attention to customer support. Somebody asked me about ready-to-fly quads and why I don't promote them very much. And it comes back to customer service. So I'm always paying attention. And I've heard a couple times from people who said, "Oh, yeah, my Holy Bro flight controller was DOA. They just sent me a new one." And I'm like, that's great. That really confirms to me that I'm doing the right thing by promoting them. So other people have said I could. To be fair, I got one email today that said, "Hey, do you know how to get a hold of Holy Bro? I've been trying to get a hold of them about this issue, and they won't answer my email." So 6 of one, half a dozen of the other. Scott Barnes asks, what are my opinions of flying and diving buildings, particularly those of private businesses? I see almost every popular pilot doing it, but I personally struggle to justify it. It seems like a risk and even a potential annoyance. That's a tough one. Scott. I would not personally feel safe flying a building over a public street because I'd worry about crashing somebody's head on a sidewalk or crashing into a car. I have flown abandoned buildings like that were just empty and there's nobody in the parking lot. Even though somebody owns the building and might not like me doing it, I just was trying to be careful not to crash into the building or do any damage, and I flew it. But you see, like, if it's an occupied building, like if it's a weekday, I personally wouldn't like to do that, I think. I don't know. It would really depend a lot on the circumstances. I can't say that I would rule it out entirely, but my concern would be, number one, safety, number two, damage to the property, and then number three, just being annoying and giving us a bad name. But it's hard. I'd have to judge that in the moment. So that's what I would say. Alex Dalton asks, how does FlightOne get better results with multi-shot than with DSHOT 600? That's a very good question. Hold on. So FlightOne, formerly Raceflight, prefers to use multi-shot at 32 kilohertz to DSHOT 600. And the reason for that is that DSHOT 600 can't really run at 32 kilohertz, and DSHOT 1200 is not well supported by many ESCs. Even though they say they support it, you get a lot of packet corruption, a lot of frame corruption. So FlightOne's perspective is that 32 kilohertz motor output is desirable, and that the best way to do that is with multi-shot. And that is it's a fact that if you want 32 kilohertz, the best way to do that is with multi-shot. Some people might argue that KISS ESCs, there may be some ESCs that do DSHOT 1200 very well without corruption, but the problem is that it's hard to know what those are. So they just stick with multi-shot. Let's see. Adrian Rudin asks how to mount any micro-sized cam in a normal-sized frame with normal-sized mounting option, like a Runcam Micro Eagle. You need a 3D printed something to put a micro cam in a normal frame. I wish somebody would make like a plastic bracket that's sized up, because these 3D printed ones, not everybody has access to them easily, but that's the answer. You just get a 3D printed thing. That's what everybody does. Let's see. Let's see here. Arnaud DS asks, hi JB, what would perform best for a freestyle frame? A frame with thin arms, like the new Hyperlight Floss style, or wide arms, like the Alien or the Rooster? My preference for freestyle is to go a little bit heavier and more durable. So I would personally go with a frame with thicker arms, because I think they're going to be more durable than a frame with thinner arms. Racers want the thinnest arms, the lightest weight, and the most thrust, and I think they give up a little bit of durability. But also, racers often are not crashing into hard targets, they're crashing into gates and grass. There are sometimes races with cement and asphalt, but they're less common. Freestylers are way more likely to be flying in an area with hard targets and need that durability. So I'd take the wider arms. Let's see. Arnold Hazenbergs asks, is it possible to use the new Runcam camera control board with a software UART? Yeah. Well, yes, you can run that on softserial, but if you're using the LED pin or a spare motor pin, then you're only going to have TX, and you need TX and RX. So what you would need to do if you wanted to run the Runcam camera control board off softserial is you would need to use 2 spare pins and assign one to softserial TX and one to softserial RX. That's the answer. Dustin Lewis asks, why should I choose Crossfire over the FrSky R9M system? I'm so glad you asked that, Dustin. I'm so looking forward to talking about that. No, I'm kidding. I don't have to hesitate to recommend Crossfire because Crossfire is legitimately a good product. Here's the way I haven't tested R9M. I've been talking to other people. I probably will test it at some point because so many of you are asking for it. R9M, by the way, in case you don't know, is FrSky's 900 megahertz. Basically, it's FrSky's competitor to Crossfire, a 900 megahertz long-distance controlling. Here's what I would say. If what you want to do is stick a module in the back of your radio, stick a receiver on your quad, and fly, R9M will probably do a good job, and it is significantly cheaper. It's about $25 for the receiver and about $60 for the module, if my memory is correct. It's significantly cheaper than Crossfire. Crossfire is a much more well-rounded and mature system. Like Crossfire, you can run smart audio straight from the receiver to the Unify, and you don't have to take up a pin on your flight controller, or if you're doing something like a flying wing that you don't have a flight controller in, you can still use smart audio even though you don't have a flight controller. Crossfire has this great, like the software that updates the firmware, the over-the-air firmware updates, binding. It's this really mature, well fleshed out system that is so much bigger than just the RF link. Now, the question that everybody asks is Crossfire better? Does it have a longer range than R9? And that I don't know the answer to that. They're both using the same chip to do the RF work, but that doesn't mean that they're equal in their implementation. The board design affects the signal to noise ratio and all that other stuff. It's possible that Crossfire is better engineered. It's possible that FrSky is better engineered, although I'd be surprised. The bottom line is that if you want the cheapest that you can get and you just want to slap a module in the back of your radio and have an RF link, then Crossfire will probably, or not, I'm sorry, the R9, the FrSky solution will probably get the job done. But so many people are running Crossfire because it is a better rounded system. You get support from TBS, and there's so much more to it. That being said, $40 for a receiver versus $25 for a receiver is going to be a deal breaker for a lot of people who are trying to outfit a large fleet. So there you go. Let's see. Jason Murphy is asking, and I think, Jason, you've been asking this, or somebody else has been asking this in the chat as well. Where do you stand on cloned frames? Does anybody really have the right to own a particular shape? I think their name is really the only ownership they can claim. Well, let's be clear. Unless you have a patent on some aspect of your frame design, there's no legal argument to be made. Okay, so that's where we'll start. Then the question is the moral argument, and that is up obviously to each individual person to decide where they draw the line. If we were to ask somebody like Trappy what the definition of a clone is, he would probably have a really sort of aggressive definition. And you'd show him 2 frames and he'd go, oh, that's a clone, that's a clone. I don't mean to put words in his mouth, but his position is well known. And there's other people out there who would look at 2 frames. Like there's people out there who look at The Martian and say The Martian is not a clone of the Alien. They're not part for part compatible. It's not like The Martian is literally just a copy of the Alien. It's slightly different. And some people would say, well, that's not a clone. So you got to decide where you draw that line. And everybody draws that line in a different place. I am not a fan. Here's what I will say. I definitely want to support people who are doing original work. Guys like Andy Shen, I always mention, because he does these great build logs that you can see his whole design and iteration process, and you can see how much work he puts into a finished design and how often he's just thrown something out after spending months working on it because it wasn't right. I want to support that process, and we support that process by buying their products, even though they're more expensive. At the same time, I understand why people buy cheaper products. And I do feel like there's people who are a little more aggressive than I prefer with the idea that anybody who isn't just a first-party frame designer is cloning. But I think you can have it both ways. I think a lot of people buy frames like the Martian or the real ACC clones of like Tommy's Umagod's frame. People buy those because they're like, oh, that's good. It's good and it's cheap and I'll take it. But there's good cheap frames out there that are also original, and you can have it both ways. Like one of the ones that I recently added to my shopping list is, here, I'll put it up on screen. Hold on. It's the Screech. Yeah, that's it. It's the Screech from Ready Made RC, and this is a $40 frame. It's 100% original, designed by Ready Made RC. So, and it's a decent frame, right? Pardon me. So if you're looking for, if you say, well, I buy clone frames because I would support original work, but I buy clone frames because I can't afford the first party frames. I get that. $120 is a lot to pay for a frame. But here's an original frame for $40. Okay, the Martian's $25. But okay, would you pay $15 more? 25, 35, 40, yeah. $15 more to support somebody original who's doing something, and you know, it's still a pretty good price for a frame. So that's, I think that if we just pay a little bit, take a little bit time to look, we can find original stuff that is also inexpensive and good quality. We can have it all. Let's see here. Where are we at? Neil Morehouse in the super chat says, I'm looking into buying some motors for 6S. What size do you recommend? Looking at 2207, 1750, a good place to start. Here's what I'll say, Neil. I would have to defer to the guys like Catalyst Machine Works who are sort of pioneering this work. They're not the only ones out there, and some people would argue they're not even the first, but they're certainly doing a lot of work to promote 6S and to develop 6S. I hope I'm not stealing some of Neil's thunder here, but when we were at Quad Camp, he was flying some 2206 1750 kV, and I don't really know his whole argument, but he was saying that the smaller motors actually do a little bit better on 6S because they draw less current, so they're a little more efficient while still making great thrust and great performance. So what I would suggest you do is that you go over to Catalyst Machine Works site and look at whatever I actually have one of his motors back there. They're 6S. I think it's a 2306 though. I don't know anybody flying 2207 1750. 2207 is a great motor size, but whether it's optimal for 6S, I mean, I don't think you're going to get bad results, but I don't know if that's necessarily the best place to go considering what you're looking for. Well, let me try and... Oh, I'm only 38 minutes behind on the Patreon posts. Let's see here. Hendrik Bush asks, with the trend moving from 5-inch quads to 7-inch or 8-inch long-range quads, do you think we'll sooner or later come full circle and end up with 10-inch 450 flame wheels? Honestly, Hendrik, I'm not sure that's a trend, frankly. 7-inch, 8-inch quads there's definitely been a sort of spike of interest in them because we have motors and ESCs that can give good performance, good handling on those bigger motors, but I'm not sure that like 5-inch is going anywhere. Like most people I know who built a 7-inch kind of fly it as a novelty, and I don't know anybody who has like 3 7-inch quads. I know you're out there, but most people build a 7-inch, go, oh, that's kind of cool, and then they go back to flying their 5 inches. So I'm not sure that's a trend. Let's see here. Quadbot, are you saying the most popular racing motor is 2207 1722? I'm surprised. I didn't know that. I honestly didn't know that. Hey, turns out I don't know everything, right? Let's see here. Colesman asks, hey, Joshua Bardwell, how do I know when I click your affiliate links that I did it right? Will it save if I log out and have a cart saved, or do I have to redo the cart? I'm not sure about that, Colesman. There's no real way for you to be 100% sure. Generally the way it works is when you click the link, it sets a cookie on your browser, and that cookie, depending on the site, may last from 24 hours to 2 weeks. It's a little unclear. I don't worry too much about it. The best thing to do is to click the affiliate link, then add the stuff to your cart, then check out. Then you know for sure that I got credit. But don't stress about it. Just go click those affiliate links every now and then. Make sure that cookie is fresh, and then just shop as usual. And if you miss one cart, it's not going to kill me. So don't stress about it. Let's see. Let's see. Okay. Raul Mahida over on the Patreon asks, I'm buying a new frame. New freestyle frames all seem to have thin arms. So should I just go 4-in-1, or should I get separate ESCs and put them on the arms? Well, if you have thin arms, you kind of have no choice but to use a 4-in-1. So that's the answer. Or you get a thick armed frame and get individual ESCs. There's no right or wrong answer there. So a lot of people are using 4-in-1s now, but individual ESCs are still great. Let's see. Will I please do a FrSky R9 versus Crossfire comparison video? Yes, I'm definitely going to do that. So many people are asking me about it. Don't expect to see anything for 2 months, because that's how long it takes me from the minute I decide to do something to the minute I actually get a video out. There's a lot going on back here. So there you go. But yes, I will do it. Did Trappy send me an Oblivion to review? Asks RealMup3R in the regular chat. No, I haven't gotten an Oblivion to review. It's so fraught reviewing TBS stuff not necessarily even because of TBS, but because the fans are so rabid that if you say bad stuff, it's a little hard to have the blowback. And I know, as a professional reviewer, I shouldn't let that drive my decision. But at the end of the day, it does come in there. But I haven't gotten to it yet. R9 Quadbot FPV asks, what's the difference between R9 and L9 in the FrSky line? R9 is 900 megahertz, basically like Crossfire. L9 is a long range. I think it's 2.4 gigahertz, but long range. There you go. Facus FPV asks, what's the best micro camera? For me, I love the Micro Eagle. That's my favorite. The Micro Eagle has a regular sized lens, but it's a very small camera, so you get good optical quality. And I love the wide dynamic range of the Eagle. Many people hate the Eagle's image, so don't just buy one until you check out one of my videos or somebody else's videos and see, if you're going to hate the image or not. But that's my current favorite. Let's see. Quadbot. I answered a bunch of your questions, Quadbot. I'm going to skip that one. Quadbot, go look up gyro overflow detection on my channel. That's the answer to your question. Voltronics, for QuadCamp questions, do we just email you? If you have a question about the logistics of QuadCamp, you can email me or Kevin, Stinger Swarm. If you have a question that you want to ask me about your quad, just come to QuadCamp and ask me. I have not tried the Night Eagle Big Data Pimp. Let's see. James Pellegrini asks, I have a Taranis QX7 that works fine in the simulators, but it makes it locks up when I'm using it with my receiver on the bench. In the receiver tab, it shows movement, and then it freezes up. I would want to make sure that that was actually happening and that wasn't something to do with like your PC or your USB port. So try it on a couple different computers and see if that's still happening. Most likely, I would guess it's going into failsafe. What you can do is you can go into the Taranis channel monitor screen where it'll show you on the Taranis LED screen what the sticks are doing, and make sure that it's seeing them move, and that'll verify that the sticks and switches are operating correctly internally. But then, does it happen? You could test it with a USB as a game controller to see if it's anything like that as well. Most likely, I would guess that the receiver is losing connection and going into failsafe, and maybe that's why it's locking up. And if that were the case, you would see the LED on the receiver turn red, and that would be an indicator that that was going on. Mr. Lee Morgan, your question about audio is going to be a little too deep for me to get into, so I'm going to skip it. I'll come back to it. Martin Decker, Joshua, I can discharge 2S, 3S, etc. via the charger, but what is the best way to discharge 1S? I need this on a weekly basis when I start the day with charging 10 plus lipos for my whoop. That's a great question. There's a lot of parallel charging and charging things for tiny whoop batteries, but I don't know of any of them that will put the batteries into storage, right? They're all chargers. So what I always end up doing is I have a parallel board for my tiny whoop batteries, and I just put them on the charger and I run it in storage mode. But it would be great if there was, the problem is they all have to be at the same voltage because it's parallel. It would be great if there was a charging board for tiny whoop batteries that could also do them in take them down to storage without actually being in parallel mode. I don't think that exists though. If that does exist, put it in the comments. Jeff K. Long, good question. Jeff K. Long in the regular chat, you can tell by the, if you're curious, over here is the regular chat. Over here are the patrons in the super chat. So if you're curious where it's coming from, that's where. Jeff K. Long says, how do Betaflight devs know what the default PID should be? And the answer to that is they have a lot of flight testers. That's the answer. A whole bunch of people fly new versions of Betaflight on a whole bunch of different quads before you ever see it, and they come up with default PIDs that they think work. And that's the answer. Deadband is in the assume that's random. Deadman is in the chat there. Thank you, Deadman. Still a moderator after all these years. Deadman is going to be, random FPV is going to be at Quad Camp at my house this weekend. A few other celebrities, some people object when I call them celebrities. Let's call them luminaries, notable people, people whose names you would recognize. Evan Turner, Heads Up FPV, says he is going to try to make it out, depending on whether he can get a ride, because he's like 15, 14, something, and so he doesn't drive yet. So hopefully he'll come out and he'll talk racing with you guys. There's a whole bunch of other people whose names I'm not going to, I don't want to insult anybody by leaving them out, but yeah, lots of people will be there. So thank you very much for helping mod in the chat there, Random. Let's see here. Martin Decker asks, I want to take video from windsurfers and fast Olympic sailing boats, but it will always be quite windy. What's the max wind speed a good prepared race quad is still controllable? Well, I think that you can, I mean, if you look at how fast these quads go, they top out around, it's really easy to build a quad that goes 60 or 70 miles an hour. It's just not even hard at all. And I see some people doing 100 kilometers per hour build. And I'm like, that's not impressive. No offense. 100 kilometers per hour is like 60 miles an hour. No big deal. Somewhere around 70 or 80 miles an hour, in my opinion, is where many sort of racing quads would top out if you're thinking top speed. And above about 80 or 90, above about 70 to 80 miles an hour into the 90 and 100 plus miles an hour, you really have to struggle and work and think and try to get to that point. So that should pretty much tell you. But the issue that you're going to run into, Martin, is more gusts than continuous winds, I think. Gusts are going to make your footage really unstable, and it's going to be really challenging. I would think in a situation like that, I would want a quad with a gimbal so that it could help compensate for the wind gusts and stuff. But I am not really an aerial photographer expert, so I'm not 100% sure about that. Bill Revenaugh wants me to explain Quad Camp if I can. Sure. Well, since you asked. Quad Camp is an event where 30 of you guys all come to the same place with me, the Rotor Riot guys, Stinger Swarm, Umagod, Ladrib. We're not all of us are in every city depending on our schedule, but you know, we come out and we get as many other smart people, helpful people, interesting people, sometimes bot grinders there, local racing and freestyle pilots. We get them to come out, and basically we just all get in a room and then do whatever you want for a weekend. So a lot of people build, a lot of people will bring their soldering iron, they'll bring parts and they'll do a new build. But the difference is that we're there looking over your shoulder, and when you have a question, we can help you. At the last one I did, I walked a guy through Betaflight setup the first time. So it's kind of like my video, honestly, but I'm right there. And everybody sort of gathered around and said, okay, we're going to set up Betaflight now. We'll do trick tutorials. You want to learn how to power loop from Stinger Swarm? No problem. He'll teach you how to power loop. You want to learn how to flow from Ladrib? He'll help you. You want to just basically whatever you want. We fly, we build, we have fun, we eat pizza, we hang out. And that's it. That's Quad Camp. The website is quadcamp.com. That's I'll just put it up on screen. Hold on. Quadcamp.com. It's KWAD camp.com. And there should be a schedule there. The next one is Detroit, and there are still tickets available for Detroit. And Detroit, I'm actually going to be missing Detroit, unfortunately. I have another trip that came up that I can't make it. And I'm so bummed because Detroit is going to be like bando heaven. So, I mean, if you ever wanted to fly bandos, Detroit is the one to go to if you're nearby. Come on. Do your thing, Website's being slow. And then I don't know if they've announced any after Detroit, but they're trying to get like the next 6 months put together because they have, see, it's just Knoxville and Detroit is up there now. The problem is they've announced many of them just like a month in advance. And so people are like, can you give me more notice when you're coming to my city? And I know that Stingy is trying to put together like a 6-month schedule so it can be like a concert tour. But that's what Quad Camp is. Come back, check out. We'll make announcements on our channels and on the Rotor Riot webpage once new cities are announced. Everybody who comes has a great time. It's just a great time. not a single person has ever said, I hated that. Granted, if they did hate it, they probably wouldn't be like, I hated it. They'd probably just leave. So, but everybody is so positive about it. And yeah, it's like $250 for the weekend, which is, I mean, that's a fair amount of money, but I think for what you get, it's worth it. A lot of people feel that way. And ultimately we got to pay travel for like 4 or 5 people, you know, staying in an Airbnb. We're really not making that much money off of it. It's just something we want to do to kind of build this community of helping people. I think there's a vision here which is bigger than just me and Stinger Swarm and Tommy and Ladrip going to your city and teaching you. The vision is that, I mean, my personal vision for it is I would love to see a bigger network of people, local volunteers, help so that we can run these things all over the place, not just where us 4 can personally be, and help people get into the hobby and enjoy it. So anyway, there you go. That's what Quad Camp is. Okay. Yeah, Brent W says it's worth it if you went to Quad Camp and you have opinions, positive or negative. If you have negative feedback, email me personally. You can make it public as well, but I don't want to miss it. If you have positive feedback, definitely, you know, I mean, yeah, we know you loved it, but if you have negative feedback, definitely make sure somebody's hearing what you didn't like. But if you went to Quad Camp, post in the comments and let people know what your experience was like. I'd love to hear about it. Will you ever do a UK Quad Camp? So many people have asked for London. I'm sure we're going to do London, but at some point, I don't know when it will be. But London has been, the problem is, like, so many people asked for Houston, and ticket sales for Houston were actually not as good as we really would have hoped. And then when we did the community meetup, so many people were like, because we always do a free community meetup in every city. And so many people came like, wow, what are you in town for? And we're like, how did the word not get out? So I don't know what happened in Houston, but London has been very, very requested. And I'm sure you're going to see a London one before too long. I don't know when it might be, but LA Hover asks, do you think Betaflight may support GPS features in the future? Betaflight supports right now direction to home and distance to home, but it doesn't really support return to home, position hold, any of that stuff. No, I don't think you're going to see that because that's just not where Betaflight is focused. iNav is really doing that stuff. And the issue you run into is, number one, developer time. But Betaflight could kind of pull that stuff back from iNav if it wanted to. But the other issue is the flash memory size, the program memory size on these chips is, especially the F3s, and especially the F1s, it just doesn't have enough space to fit all that stuff. And that's the bottom line why you're probably not going to see that. Let's see here. What do I think? Facus FPV asks, what do I think of the Axie UFL? In case you don't know, this is what he's talking about. It's an antenna, the Axie UFL. And it's a Luminaire Axie antenna with a UFL pin directly on it. And by the way, there's also, I don't know if I can find it really quickly, but there's also an MMCX version of the Axie MMCX, which is the same thing, but with an MMCX connector directly on it. I really like this antenna for the right build, right? Especially the MMCX version, which is so easy to put on and take off. I think the Axie is a really good antenna in terms of RF. It's very durable. Like if you look at something like the Vaz Ion, it's a very, very good antenna, but it's just not durable enough, in my opinion, to put on a quad, whereas the Axie is super durable. So I think for the kind of race quad where you would normally have like a little dipole whip antenna, but you want a little bit better performance, I think the Axie UFL or MMCX is a great one. Let's see here. Mr. Balrog says, what were you saying before there, Mr. Balrog? I see your comment, but it seems like you're following up something. Mr. Balrog says, I don't think Rotor Riot Quad Camp have any clue how to extend the brand or event without running it themselves. Well, that is a challenge. I mean, that's a challenge with any business, that you start with the founder who has a vision and is in some ways uniquely qualified to do the thing. and the founder creates the company and creates the business, but at some point you have to be able to jump to past the point of what you can personally do. And that's, I mean, that's why I'm personally, one of the reasons that I was excited to get involved with QuadCamp is because it's headed up by Chad Kapper. And I'm not trying to make this about Chad Kapper as a person. I know that I know that some people have strong feelings about him as a person, but one of the things I know that he's capable of doing is, if you look at Flight Test, which he was involved in founding the channel Flight Test, and now it's a business that employs 40 people, and they were able to take what made them successful and expand it into something bigger than just Josh Bixler and Josh Scott and Chad Kapper. And I really, I hope, I mean, nothing is guaranteed, but I hope that that's what he will bring to the table when it comes to something like QuadCamp, is whatever it takes to be able to expand it beyond just me coming to your town and looking over your shoulder. That's something I have cared about for a long time. I make these videos and I do these Q&As because I care about helping you guys enjoy the great Pardon. Good thing I had the lid on. I care about helping you guys enjoy the great hobby of FPV. That's not just a slogan. I sincerely mean that. This is a great hobby. It's so fun, and it's so frustrating and difficult to get into, and I want to help you enjoy it. But the fact, and the reason I make 6 videos a week is because I'm so passionate about that. But I want it to be bigger than just me, because I can only make so many videos. And so QuadCamp, expanding it beyond that, that's all part of a bigger vision that I hope that we can realize, and QuadCamp hopefully can be a vehicle for that. But it's not a sure thing. It's a very difficult thing to do. So let's see here. Joe Bruno, yeah, Joe, I know a lot of the links on my Amazon links are dead. It's hard to get back through there and clean them up, and hopefully you can buy them from somewhere else, or just search on Amazon for the board if the link is dead. Joe, if you give me a list of specific links that are dead, if you email that to me, I will go clean them up. I just don't have the time always to go back through the shopping list and clear out the dead links because I'm just so busy doing other things. Herman Naple, I hope I said your name right, Herman. What's your #1 tip for people who are new to FPV? That is a good one. Here's my, and this is legit, my #1 tip for people who are new to FPV is don't power up your quad next to other people who are flying, because you'll knock them off the air. Even if you're on a different channel, even if you're in pit mode, when you're at an event, when you're flying with other people, only power up in the designated power up area when you know that you have the channel to yourself. And if you're not sure, just don't plug your battery in until somebody else tells you it's okay, and don't plug in near them. Now, if you're the kind of person who's flying by yourself, then that tip doesn't apply. So then my next tip is, if you're learning to fly FPV, bite the bullet and learn to fly in acro mode. Don't learn to fly FPV in angle mode, unless maybe you're flying tiny whoops, and those seem to do better in angle mode for reasons which we won't get into. But if you really want to race big, 5-inch, 4-inch quads, bite the bullet and learn to fly it in angle mode or acro mode. Practice in the sim. Your life will be a lot easier. That's my other tip. Let's see. Is BL Heli still recommended as in the ultimate shopping list? That's a good point, Roee Mazor. In my ultimate FPV shopping list, I expressed some hesitation about BL Heli 32 because at the time, and I think it has changed. And I want to make, I think I updated it, but I should go back and make sure. BL Heli 32 with release 32.4 is basically fully mature and ready to go. With 32.2, like in 32.2, the DSHOT commands were not supported in all ESCs, so you couldn't do turtle mode, for example. But with 32.4, it's 100% there. And BLA 32 version 32.4 has this feature. Hang on. This is the single best reason to use BL Heli 32 right now, and I'm only half kidding. Ready? Oh, I'm sorry about that, guys. I bonked the mic. You can do custom musical startup tones. Now, I have been annoyed in the past at the Imperial March because, I just oh my God, again. But the ability to pick anything you want and play it, that's kind of cool. Okay, I like it. So BL Heli 32, yeah. BL Heli S is still fine. If you have BL Heli S ESCs, don't throw them out. If you, I don't know if I would buy a BL Heli S ESC today, now that BL Heli 32.4 is out. They're good. I mean, if you're like constrained on price, yeah, go ahead, get them. But BL Heli 32 is where the sort of best features are going to be going forward. And we're starting to see more and more of those features that are compelling for BL Heli 32, like DSHOT commands, like custom musical tones, like ESC telemetry. Those are all things that are the case for BL Heli 32 is getting more and more compelling. Scott Barnes, why do you pronounce patrons as patrons but Patreon as Patreon? Because the name of the website is Patreon, Patreon. That's the name of the site. But the people are patrons. A patron is someone who patronizes you, who gives you money. I think that's just... The real question is, why did Patreon name their website Patreon? Which, as far as I know, isn't a word. Is it? Anyway. Let's see. I'm 15 minutes behind. The comments on are 15 minutes out on my Patreon thread, so I'm feeling pretty good about that. I got one super chat, I think. That old dude gave me $10. Thank for no questions. Just thanks to that old dude. Bill Revenaugh gave me $5. Said, God bless you. Thank you all for this awesome support. Thank you, Bill, for $5. Marco gave $5 and said, what's the best 5-inch ready to fly for someone who lives in the sim? And I have an answer for you, too. I got to tell you guys, for the longest time, when people ask, what's the 5-inch ready to fly that you recommend, I said the Holybro Copus. And the Holybro Copus is still a very, very good ready to fly, but I think the Emax Hawk 5 has knocked it off its throne for me. I have a review of the Emax Hawk 5 coming out soon. But the short version is that it's a freaking good quad for $250 bind and fly with a FrSky receiver pre-installed. There are a few things to not like about it. Like, I wish the video transmitter had remote control, smart audio. It's a push button only. I'm like, come on, Emax, get with the times. But overall, it flies great for racing and for freestyle, and it's $250. And the only thing I would say is, if you're going to buy one, use my affiliate link, okay? But I don't even hesitate to recommend it. It's so freaking good. You do got to fly it on the props that it came with. I took it to the multi-GP regional qualifier. I actually tried to qualify, and I didn't do well, but I raced it in their multi-GP regional qualifier, and I was out of... It comes with these Avon Flow props, and they're specifically tailored for the motors, and I didn't have any of them, and I tried some other props, and it flew worse on... I tried several other props, and it flew much worse on all of them, so it really needs... It's really a system, but it flies really well, especially for a $250 quad on the props it comes with. And I think it's my new favorite. I think it's knocked off. The Holybro Copus has a better, like, it has VTX remote control, and the camera, I think, on the Copus is slightly better. But the Copus is $280, and I think the Hawk flies better, especially if what you're concerned with is racing. Okay, so there you go. Let's go back then to the regular chat. And Flightbox, did you have a chance to test the fixed ClearView module? No, I haven't gotten that yet. They haven't sent it to me yet. They've got it back from the factory. They're testing it. They haven't sent it to me yet. Henrik B asks, hi JB, love your channel. What motors would you recommend for a rooster build? So check out the FPVknowitall.com ultimate FPV shopping list. I have recommended motors at every price point. But in general, if I had to pick like one freestyle motor now, I think the T-Motor F43 for 2400 kV is pretty good for freestyle. I have the hype trains on my QAVR and I like them, but I actually really want to switch them out for the hype train Ladrib because I like higher kV motors. That's a pretty good one. In the lower price, I would be looking at the RCX 2207 2400 kV from my RC Mart. Those are some suggestions. Let's see. Kiss or Betaflight? Asks Skinny Flea 262. I'm thinking about building a new quad like Mr. Steel, but I like the Betaflight stuff too. So, and other people have asked, and I think one of my patrons asked this, why don't I do more with Kiss and FlightOne? And the answer is, so first of all, it's nothing personal. It's nothing personal. It's not like I dislike them, especially Kiss. Like Felix, the main Kiss Fader Commander, like the Kiss developers. I don't want to just say pick on him, but those guys are great guys. I especially like when they developed DSHOT, they shared it with the Betaflight devs. Was it DSHOT that they shared? I think it was. So they've always been really good to the community, despite the fact that they developed closed source, which I prefer open source, but closed source is a thing, and it's there's reasons why they did that. They've always been really cool, and I really wish them the best success. At the same time, I usually stick with what I'm good at because I'm so freaking busy that if I were to do a Kiss build, it would take me 5 times longer than a Betaflight build, at least the first time, and I'm so freaking busy, I'm never hurting for topics to talk about, and so I just never get around to doing something that's outside of my comfort zone. I've been doing more Butterflight because at least Butterflight is based on Betaflight, so kind of everything I know already transfers over, but Kiss would just be starting from scratch. I kind of want to do a Kiss build because I've heard such good things about the Kiss V2, the dynamic filter in Kiss V2, but I just never seem to get to it because I'm so busy with doing other things. Which one should you get, Skinny Flea? Well, if you want to build a quad like Mr. Steel, fly what Mr. Steel builds. Fly Kiss. Do his build and use his PIDs, and you could do a lot worse than copying, one of his quads. Let's see here. Leon Schubert says, I bought a new QX7 and an XM Plus, and I'm having some problems. I tried all the UARTs. It's soldered on SBUS. It's bound. Failsafe is set. I tried pretty much everything, and it didn't work. Well, so if you're using an XM Plus, then there's only one signal wire, so it's outputting SBUS. You have to be using an inverted UART. So you didn't say what flight controller you're using, and that would be helpful. So you got to use an inverted UART on an F4 flight controller. If it's an F3 or an F7, then they all do inversion. But that's my guess. Is you're using an F4 and you've soldered it onto a UART pad, but you have to find the SBUS pad on the flight controller, which will have the inverter that it needs. Let's see here. What's my favorite quad frame? Asks Lance. Lance, my favorite quad frame right now, it's probably the Chameleon. The Chameleon, the thing I don't like, I actually don't like the low deck on the Chameleon very much. Because it tightens up the build. You can really only get 2 stack in there, not 3 stack, which, okay, that's fine. But especially if you're using a 4-in-1 ESC, that really tightens things up. And if you look at the builds that Armatan does, they use individual ESCs on the arms, and then they have plenty of room. But oftentimes I'm using a 4-in-1, and that makes it a little bit annoying. But overall, the Chameleon is such a freaking tank to fly, especially the metal front end. And I like that it's got adjustable up tilt for the GoPro. The GoPro goes on super easy. It's a nice flying quad. Maybe it's not the best flying quad. I think you could debate that. But it's such a tank once it's in the air. And just you crash the dickens out of it and it keeps going. For freestyle, I think that's probably my favorite. Nexus D. Take it easy, Nexus D. You're going in timeout. You're being really salty, Nexus D, in general, but now you just said this isn't a live tech chat. Piss off. No, this guy can get help in the chat. If other people want to answer him, that's great. So you piss off for now. You're in timeout. Why is there not a simple UART inverter board that we can buy? Well, there is. Shy Perednik asks. You can get an inverter. I mean, it's just like, let me see if I can just find one real quick. Hang on. I'm just looking for like a bidirectional inverter on DigiKey. I mean, it's like going to be like a 10-cent part, you know? That they exist, and you could probably find somebody who's got, if I just search for SBUS inverter, I bet I'll find that too. Yeah, here we go. Signal inverter for NACE 32 flight controller, $2. There you go. So that's the inverter you need. The reason that nobody uses that is that nobody wants to put this extra board on there. I don't know why. Maybe laziness. But at the end of the day, yeah, this is what you need. If you have a flight controller and you're having trouble with inversion, if you don't want to do the uninvert hack on your flight controller, this is the kind of thing that you would buy. It's just an SBUS inverter. They totally exist. Any thought on the Wraith 32 ESCs? FPV Escape. I have the Wraith 32s actually on this build, and I gotta say, this build has noise issues. When you're hovering, it kind of does the little tick, 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 twitch, twitch thing. And I've tried everything. I've added capacitors, I've soft mounted, I've tried filters. It didn't fix it. Finally, I changed the motors, which I was going to do the 2306 versus 2207 comparison on that quad. I changed the freaking motors, and it still didn't do it. And I'm kind of wondering if it's the ESCs. So I think there's better ESCs out there than the Wraith today. They were one of the first BLHeli 32s. I think there's better ones out there today that you could be looking at. Yeah. Volatronics asks, do we need FAA registration and FCC license in addition to the AMM membership for QuadCam? The answer to that is no. I should probably just put that in the comments. Will I review the Wizard 220S? The 220S? Which one is that one? I don't know. Maybe. Here's the thing. The Wizard, I feel like the Emax Hawk has, like the Wizard 220S is, I think it's $200 it looks like from Progressive RC, $180 from that's a pretty big difference. The Hawk is so freaking good. Like if you were gonna spend, I see it's on sale, that's why it's $170. Normally so it looks like the Wizard 220S is normally about $200. The Hawk is so good for $250. I would almost tell you not to buy the Wizard and just save another $50 for the Hawk. That's tough. I don't know if I'm going to review. I reviewed the original Wizard X220, and so many people get into the hobby on that quad, even though it's got so many problems. I'm really glad I was able to do that review and the setup videos. It's helped a lot of people get into the hobby. But at the same time, so many people buy the Wizard, and then, 10 packs later, it's grounded, and they don't know why. And then maybe it would have been better to buy a little bit of better quad. The Emax Hawk is a very good ready to fly. It's shockingly good for the price. I don't know how Emax does it, but I feel like I would almost rather spend my time promoting that rather than reviewing like the X220S. The first quad I built, Flip It, was a flight test electro hub with like 7-inch, 9-inch props and a multi-wii flight controller. Nathan Stenzel says, could we get a Joshua Bardwell track in a flight sim, perhaps liftoff? I've thought about, that's a common question, and I've thought about that for a while. I will say this. I think of all the sims that are out there, liftoff does the best job of doing like exterior environments, especially if you look at like their CES track, or maybe their Dubai track. They're very good external environments. I think if I was going to pick a simulator to do my house in, it would be Liftoff. What do you guys think? Tell me in the comments. I'll try and pay attention in the comments. Is there a simulator out there that would do a better job of like building my house than Liftoff? Let's see what you think. Master Chef, will we see any 6S battery testing? Here's the thing about that. I've thought about that. The 6S packs use the same cells as the 4S packs, don't they? There's just two more of them. So two identical packs, one 4S, one 6S, the 6S should perform the same, assuming the cells are identical. So I want to test the 6S packs, but 4S is still way more popular, and I almost feel like you can extrapolate the results. So Yeah. Let's see here. Vlad says, I love liftoff, but not that easy to make whole environments. Yeah, but I mean, Vlad, who makes, like, look at the CES track, for example, the city track. What other simulator does big outdoor environments like that? I guess Velocidrone has some, like the castle track, but it's not a simulation of a real environment. That's the thing. If you look at who emulates real environments, like Rotor Rush does real environments, but it's just basically a race course on a track, you know? I don't know. Toby Vincent, could you explain what a UART is and what it means? I've been building by the numbers, but I don't understand what they are. So a UART is a serial interface. Think of it kind of like a USB port in that it's something you attach a peripheral to. So a UART is a way for the flight controller to talk to some external resource like a receiver or something like that. That's the answer. Alex Hoffman, any reasons for really hot motors? D-gain not too high, caps added, no continuity of screws and phases, fresh props, tried different ESCs. Well, Alex, I would there are two things. You've ruled out all of the common things that I would go for, but one of the things that I would say is make sure you're not overpropping. You see this a lot when people are trying to build micros, like they'll do like 1104 motors and then they'll put 3-inch props on it and try and run it on 4S and the motors get really hot. But assuming you're not overpropping, then the other thing I would look at is the flight controller. If noise is getting into the flight controller, you're going to get hot motors because the gyro is really noisy. You can rule that out by setting D-gain to 0. Now, the quad won't fly well, but if you set D-gain to 0 and the motors get cool, and then you raise D-gain even to a nominal number like 15 or 20, and the motors get hot again, then you know it's noise. It's just a question of where the noise is coming from. Let's see here. Let's see. Okay. All right, guys, we're going to keep going. We've now been going for 2 hours. We're going to keep going, but I'm going to take a quick break to, take care of a few things. And then, then I'll come back in about 5 minutes and we'll pick up again, okay? So I'm going to go on break. See you guys in 5 minutes. I can read your comments, MF Boom. It's not going to work. Plus, I have a way of monitoring it. Now you get to hear me eat cheese. There you go. Hello, I'm back. Yep, I have the ability to see that. Let's see, am I working? Oh yeah, I can hear. I got a monitor. All right. We're back in the second half of the live stream. Yeah. I've been watching some Twitch streamers lately. No, don't worry. I'm not going to turn into a Twitch streamer. When I first started getting into streaming, I thought, well, maybe there are things I could learn from them, but I've come to the conclusion that Twitch streamers are doing something completely different from what I'm doing. Nevertheless, I'm super entertained by some of these guys. You may have seen I have my Dr. Disrespect shirt on in some of my recent videos. The two-time international video gaming champion, 1993 and 94. Oh, that guy's great. He's great. He's great. I love it. I haven't seen Tyler. No. Now you're going to tell me all the streamers I should watch. Here's the thing. I'm actually not that into streaming or gaming, but he's just so freaking entertaining as a character. He's great. Mason FPV, we're going to come back on your question. How can I charge my FrSky 2,000 milliamp hour battery for my Taranis QX7? All it has is a balance connector. Here's the answer. There are two answers to your question. Hang on. Oh, dagnabbit. Hang on. Yeah, here it is. There's two answers to your question. How do you charge a battery with only a balance connector? That is the question. One is that you're going to use something like this. This is a charger, Turnigy LiPo. This basically charges only via the balance connector. Now this is the exact one I use. You just plug a 2S or 3S battery in here and it charges it over the balance connector. I like to use a little extension just to make it a little easier to plug in. That's what I use. The other thing you can use, and this, I made a video about this. Maybe somebody will post the URL in the comments. This is an adapter you can get from Ready Made RC, where you plug the balance plug from your battery in here, and it converts it to a balance and XT60 to let you charge. So those are two options that you've got there. Okay, we're coming back. We're coming back into the stream. We've been going for about 2 hours, and I'm just going to take this opportunity to give you a little plug and remind you guys, in case you didn't know, you guys know, but for anybody who didn't know, this is my full-time job now. Can you believe it? Since about January, so 1, 2, 3, it's 4 months, almost 4 full months, and I still have not living on the street in the gutter. So thank you so much for your support. I hope that the quality of my videos has been, quantity hasn't gone up, it hardly could, but the quality I hope has been better than ever. And if you want to keep supporting that, there are various ways you can do that hang on one second, right here at my website, fpvknowitall.com, which if you go to the About section and click Support Me, you can find ways to support me. Basic things like subscribing to my channel, subscribe to my Patreon, or use my affiliate links, or just, hey, just give me money, if you want to just do that. But there are various ways you can help support me. So that is much appreciated. It lets me keep doing this. Hold on, I have to go. My cat is trying to get in the room, and it's going to keep picking at the door and scratching at the door and driving me crazy until I go get rid of her. So hold on. On the internet? Do you want to be on the internet? Here. The internet likes cats. See, here she is. She's so annoyed right now. Good. You're annoying me. Go away. Okay. Okay then. Back to the questions and the live stream. Hate Eternal Maver says, Joshua Bardwell, I have my antennas sticking up really high and wonder if I can wind up the black part more and just have the ends sticking out, or will that affect performance? No, that's fine. The ends of the antennas, that's the part that is the antenna. The rest is just a wire. You can coil it up. That's fine. Just don't kink it. Don't like fold it and kink it. Just bend it. But that's fine. There's no reason. There's no reason you can't do that. Let's see here. What's the best 3-inch quad under 250 grams? Well, let's just check. This is the massive droner from Catalyst Machine Works. Is it under 250 grams? Let's find out. 136 grams. Sheesh. I don't know enough about 3-inch quads to say whether this is the best, but it's got to, coming from Catalyst, it's got to be up there, right? So I would certainly give it a look. The Baby Hawk R is the other one people often seem to mention as being really amazing. Worth looking at. What LiPo would I recommend for a Taranis SE? Over on the Ultimate FPV shopping list in the transmitter and controller and receiver section, I have a link to the battery I use. The only problem, here's the one that I use. It is this one from Get FPV. It's the Luminaire 3S 2500 milliamp hour pack. The only problem with this one is that it's not widely available, especially outside the US. So you may not be able to find it depending on where you're ordering from. The other one I found that seems to fit really well is this Thunder Power pack, which is really weird because the Thunder Power pack is like the same size as the 3S 2500. So I don't know how a 2S 2600 and a 3S 2500 can be the same size, but you know, at the end of the day, your Taranis only pulls, like, it doesn't pull that much power anyway. The battery's going to last for 2 months. So just, you know, you could pick one of those two. But they fit pretty well in the battery bay. So let's see here. Best 8 to 10 dBi patch, asks Lee Swifty. And you guys, I'm happy to talk about products, but that is kind of the whole reason I made this website, was because people were so often asking me, what's the best this, what's the best that, and I just like, fine, I'll make a website out of it. For antennas, the best, I think the TrueRC X-Air is my pick for the best patch antenna, period. Now it comes in around 10 dB, which you may not know this, but for antennas get their gain by focusing the antenna pattern. So a higher gain antenna is not always the right one. If you get like a 15 dB antenna, it's going to have a really narrow pattern. And for like freestyle or even racing, maybe that may not be what you want. If you fly over to the side, now the antenna you're not in the beam anymore. So you don't necessarily want the highest gain antenna you can get. And I think that X-Air antenna, I think it's got like 120 degree beam width, which is pretty good. 10 dB of gain. And I find that it's got enough additional gain that when you're out in front of yourself, you get a little bit more range, but it's not so high gain that if you move your head a little bit, you're outside of it. So that to me is the sweet spot. A lot of people like the Pepperbox antenna, which is it's the same design as the X-Air. It's a crosshair design, but it's 1, 2 on top of each other. And the effect that has is to compress the pattern vertically. So you get more gain, but less vertical beam width. My concern with the Pepperbox antenna is a very good antenna, but my concern is that if you put it on your goggles and then you drip your head like so many people do, then you're going to be outside the beam and it's not going to be useful. But for a ground station, I would certainly look at the Pepperbox as well. NMMM6 says, acknowledge you make yourself a racing wing. I'm working on making a racing wing for my DJI Goggles RE and OcuSync long-range build. That is taking some time for various reasons, though. Let's see. What question did I miss, Bill? Kevin Gillette. I missed a question from Bill Revenaugh. You know, I don't know about that. If I missed it, I apologize. Unfortunately, they go by so fast. X-Air or VAZ, asks Dave B. X-Air or VAZ? I guess you mean the VAZ. Well, which VAZ antenna do you mean, Dave? There's so many. So Kevin Gillette says, please help. I have this issue with an F4. When I connect the V in to cam and V out to VTX, only the camera image appears, no OSD. What you want to do is go into the Betaflight configurator OSD tab and manually select NTSC or PAL, depending on which your camera is outputting. And if you're not sure, just pick one, save, reboot, try again. If it doesn't, pick the other. The auto detection of NTSC and PAL sometimes doesn't work, and that can manifest as the OSD disappearing. Why does the LUA Script not work with the FrSky D8 mode SBUS receiver? Because D8 mode doesn't support SmartPort telemetry, and LUA Script needs SmartPort telemetry to work. That's the short version. Let's see. The X-Air, I think, Deadband, I think you're right. I think that the X-Air was designed by Alex Grieve. So when you say X-Air or VAZ, then they're actually the same thing. Let's see. Is 500 millihertz legal? Invert FPV. Do you mean milliwatts? Is 500 milliwatts legal? Yes. If you have a ham license, I think as much as 1 watt is legal, maybe more. But if you don't have a ham license, none of it's legal. So get a ham license is what you could say. Why don't more companies make RF power meters? Immersion RC slacking on stock. Scraggle Rock, I am super excited because Immersion RC, I'm supposed to get this weekend my Immersion RC power meter, not the old one, which I have, but the new one. The problem with the Immersion RC power meter is that the resistor, the load resistor that's used on it, it's not calibrated well, and so you don't get accurate power readings from it. If you're testing 2 video transmitters side by side, it'll tell you which is more powerful, but it won't tell you, is this 25 milliwatts? Immersion RC has a new power meter they're coming out with that is calibrated at the factory to measure accurately, and I can't wait for it. Why don't more people make them? Well, the answer to that question is lots of people do make them. They're just RF test tools, and they cost $1,000. You could get one from Agilent or I don't know who else, right? Siemens, but you don't want to spend that much. The real question is, why don't more people make cheap ones for us RF people or us RC hobbyists? And the answer is that we're a very small market. So thanks to Immersion RC for making a power meter that we can all afford. Well, some of us can afford anyway, and not making us spend $1,000 on a Siemens or an Agilent or something. Catastrophic asks, who are some of your favorite freestyle pilots to watch? You know, let me think. I have to say that my favorite is still, well, maybe that's not true. Johnny FPV has been my favorite for a long time, but he has started doing a lot of this cinematic stuff, which is super cool that he's doing this with mini quads, but it's actually less like the kind of freestyle that really knocked my socks off with him. Free Fall is really good. Many of you probably haven't seen him. We got some shout out on the community, on the Rotor Riot community page. Yeah, wow. Who else? The funny thing is that I watch these guys fly and I'm blown away, and then I just seldom remember their names. I just watch the videos. I'm like, oh, that guy's really good. I don't watch as many videos as you might think because I'm always so heads down trying to make videos. Any plans for a Bardwell Micro? No plan at this time. Improved Bardwell F4, nothing to announce. You know, I know that the minute that the Bardwell F4 came out, I was already thinking about things that I'd like to do better for next time. But there's nothing specific at this time. Let's see here. No, Agilent is Keysight. Yeah, good point. I need to show my age. Glasses and Fatshark is my problem, says Powell K. Yeah, well, the problem with glasses and Fatshark, you can get RHO Lens. RHO Lens is a company. You can find them on my Ultimate FPV shopping list. RHO Lens will do custom inserts for you, and then you can just stick them in your Fatshark, and they have your exact prescription. Yeah, Robogenesis is very good. Robogenesis is very good. Gapit. There's a lot of good pilots. Usually, like, for example, I was out in Houston last weekend, and Zachary Thayer was there, A-Noob. And I knew him from DRL and racing, but it turns out he's actually a hell of a good freestyle pilot. And, how do I not know that? Well, there's just so many people out there. Like, it's like, well, how did you not see it? He was like, what, you don't watch my channel? I'm like, I'm sorry, there's so many people out there. Everybody should go check out his channel. He's a really good freestyle pilot in addition to being a good racer. Invert FPV. So you can only do 100 milliwatts without a ham license? No, you can't do anything without a ham license. If you don't have a ham license in the United States, none of these video transmitters are legal for you to use, no matter what the power output is, because they are not Part 15 certified. So the idea is basically either the operator needs to be certified by having a ham license, or the equipment needs to be certified. And if the by being Part 15. And if the equipment is certified, it's got all these things to keep you from screwing with it. Like, you can't change the power output, and you can't detach the antenna. So none of the video transmitters we're using are Part 15 certified. Most of them would not even be capable of getting Part 15 certification, for example, because they have a removable antenna. So you basically, if you fly FPV in the United States and you don't have a ham license, you're not legal. That's the gist of it. You could nitpick some of this stuff, but can you state 000? I did 2C. Or question? Anyone else know if using my parallel charge board is fine to be used for 3-cell? Well, the balance connector won't fit. So, I mean, yeah, if you're careful to plug it in, you jam it in there, but that's kind of defeating the whole purpose of the board, right? That's like saying, is it okay for me to drive my car without my seatbelt on? Well, yeah, but that's kind of the whole point of the seatbelt, right? The whole point of the board is that it makes it impossible for you to accidentally plug in the wrong cell voltage, and if you want to do that, you can. It'll work. There's nothing inherently dangerous about it, but just you're going to be, why don't you just get a 3-cell board? So, let's see. 1 watt is the legal limit RC power for output for a technician license. Yeah, I think 1 watt is the limit for telecommand of an RC craft. But the question is whether the FPV video is considered telecommand or not. I think that's the question. I'm not 100% sure whether there's a ruling there. The ham license test invert FPV is in person. You have to go to a place where the test is being given, sit down in a room with a pad with a printed test and a pencil, and take a test in front of an actual person. It's really not too hard to study for if you have a little bit of memorization and test taking skills. It's not a very difficult test. Even if you don't understand the underlying stuff, the entire question pool is public, so you can literally just memorize the questions if you're the kind of person who's like able to do that. RC Nova asks, best VTX with an MMCX connector. Well, I got to mention the Mach 2 from Race Day Quads, now that they've sorted out their smart audio issue. And by the way, if you buy a Mach 2 from Race Day Quads today, it will have working fixed smart audio. The Cricket, the new Cricket, not the old Cricket. If you go to Ready Made RC's site and you search for the Cricket, let me just put it up on screen as long as I've got, hey, I have the technology. Yeah, the new Cricket Pro V2. I haven't tested this, but it's very exciting. The specs are very exciting. MMCX connector, nice small form factor, plug header, so you can easily disconnect it if that's what you're into. Built-in microphone, super nice. And It supports smart audio or telemetry, one of the two, but it also has two nice buttons that you can push buttons and look at LEDs if that's what you're into, and it's $34. So that's a nice one. Ready-made RC Cricket, I would give that a look. Another one that people are looking at is the AKK FX2 Ultimate, which goes up to, like, they say it goes up to 1.2 watts. So very high power output, and it's like $20. That's interesting. And what is another one? Those are ones. Oh, of course. Yeah. I can look at my own website, for gosh sakes. Here's one that I like. The Maytech FC Hub VTX excites me because it stacks. Here we go. This is great. It stacks with the Maytech F405 with a ribbon cable between them, and it's integrated into the PDB. So for a 2-high board, you get VTX, PDB, and flight controller, and it's so easy to put them together with the ribbon cable. It's very nice. Here you can see this is my here's my thumbnail. Yeah, it's pretty exciting. So those are some that I would look at. Okay. Let's see here. And I'm sure the chat is chiming in as well. Focal FPV. I'm looking for a diversity module for my Spektrum Focal goggles. I believe the Focal goggles do not have the diversity bay, so LaForge is going to be out for you. I would probably consider either the Eachine Pro 58 module with the Achilles Pro firmware or the Furious True D 3.6, or now 3.7 is out, I think. Derek Dvorak asks, Joshua, with your charge board, what charger would work well, and would I need a power supply? And the answer to that, any charger will work with it. It just needs to be a charger with enough watts that you can charge the battery. So assuming you're charging batteries around 1,500 milliamp hours or smaller, you're probably going to want something that can output 8 or 10 amps to be able to charge, maybe even as much as 15 amps to be able to charge at 1C. And it will need a power supply. Are there different rules based on age for the ham license? No, not as far as I know. I think you need to be at least like 14 years old. There's a minimum age, but above that, I don't think there's any difference in the rules. Let's see. Yes, Two Heli asks, is the Hall sensor gimbal much better than regular quad ball bearing gimbals? I think that the difference between a Hall sensor gimbal and a brand new quad ball bearing gimbal may be small. But 6 months later, there's definitely going to be a difference. The Hall sensor gimbal ages much better because there's no physical mechanism to wear out. I got to get some questions. There have been a couple more questions that have come in the Patreon. One of them is, what do you think of the drone on your phone game for training muscle memory? Drone on your phone is a iPhone game where you use 2 fingers to race a quadcopter. I don't think it's very good for training muscle memory. 2 reasons. Number one, I've flown it and it is hard as hell to fly, so it just doesn't fly that well for me. And number 2, you're not training the same muscle memory because I guess if you fly thumbs maybe, but the sticks don't auto center. And there's no feedback, so I don't really think you're training muscle memory. I don't think if you want to do that, use a real transmitter and use a simulator. Steve Fonger. Sorry, Steve. How do you say your name? What are your thoughts on us being forced into using the full-size GoPro now that they've discontinued the session form factor? Well, I mean, that's just nobody's like forcing you to do it. It's just a marketing decision. It's a business decision. I mean, we can't force GoPro to make a session. So, I mean, it's a bummer that the session is dying. I miss it. I bought a couple extras because I just wanted to have them. But eventually they're going to break, and then I'm going to be screwed, and I'm going to get something else, and I don't know what it's going to be. But, that's life. Life goes on. Apparently there was not a business model for it compared to, GoPro's like at risk of going out of business. Here's my hope. Did you guys hear that Xiaomi, the maker of like the Xiaomi Yi, among other things, Xiaomi is apparently like put in an offer to buy some IP from GoPro? I would love to see Xiaomi buy the IP from GoPro and then make a session-shaped camera. Xiaomi makes pretty good cameras, but they don't have things like proper Super View or ProTune. So I would love to see Xiaomi take over and do that. That would be fantastic. That's kind of my dream plan, honestly. Scott McCaffrey asks in the Patreon, why is it called the moron threshold? Because Timecop is a dick. That's why. That comes way back from the original Betaflight developer who went by the handle Timecop, and he was a little bit abrasive. And what that threshold does is it says how if you plug the quad in and then you don't set it down, the gyro can't calibrate. And his position was that if you plug the quad in and don't set it down, then you're a moron. So the threshold that controls when the gyro can calibrate is called the moron threshold. And that name has stuck ever since Betaflight. And that's why it's there. That's the answer. Matthew Talon, any plans to review the Helio Spring? Yes, as I said earlier, you might have missed it. I have the Helio Spring review shot and just need to edit it. And I'm hoping to get to it real soon. It's very interesting. What level of ham do you need for quads? Asks Invert FPV. Just the technician, just the basic, whatever the basic one is. Technician, I think it is. That's all you need for operating quads. Yoel Adamus says, well, they were losing money. GoPro was losing money because people were returning them to Best Buy at a furious rate. As much as I'd like to say surely that had nothing to do with it, it might have had something to do with it. If you're mad that the session is no more and you did warranty claims on a session, on the other hand, I mean, you can hardly blame us for taking advantage of the policy. They made the policy. You can hardly blame us for taking advantage of it. White Boy FPV, you ever come with race day quads and make a Bardwell F7? Yeah, I mean, obviously, someday we're going to make an F7, right? Obviously, the F4 is going to go away, and I'm going to keep making flight controllers. I don't know when that would be, though. Any suggestions for a good portable soldering iron? I do not in any way have to hesitate to answer that question. It is the TS100. This is absolute. Wow, $55? Really? Wow, that is cheap. This is hands down the best portable soldering iron you can possibly buy. No question, just go buy it. Some people buy the TS100 as their primary soldering iron. I personally wouldn't do that. The handle is really thin. The ergonomics are nowhere near as good as like a Hacko or a Weller or a bench iron. So personally, I mean, you could. It can do anything you need it to do, but personally, I don't like the ergonomics for a primary iron. But for a portable iron, you cannot do better than this. It's such a good iron. And you can get custom firmware that you put on it. It's pretty easy to upgrade the firmware. It makes it go, by default, it only goes up to 400 degrees Celsius. If you want it to go a little higher, it can go up to 450. There's even a firmware that'll freaking make it play Tetris. So it's great. It's a great product. If you're looking for a portable iron, look no further. This is it. Yep, that's the answer. And by the way, in case you wondered, it is on my Ultimate FPV shopping list, and you can buy it using my affiliate links. Thank you so much. Let's see. Bryce asks, how do I adjust my milliwatts and see where I'm at to fly with my friends? I can change the channel, but I'm not sure. I have a Furby X215. Now, I don't know about the Furby X215 specifically. Is it possible that it only operates at 25 milliwatts and it's just not adjustable? I'd have to look up the the manual for that. Maybe the folks in the comments who have that same quad can tell you how to adjust your output power, Bryce. I don't know off the top of my head, and I'm not sure I want to take the chat time to go try and look it up. If I knew the answer, I'd tell you. Nick Hessen, what do you think the biggest problem people have or do when they parallel charge? The biggest problem people have when they parallel charge is that they plug batteries in when the voltage is not close to each other. The problem is that when two batteries are in parallel, and here's the analogy I like to make. Imagine that you've got two tanks of water side by side, okay? And one is really full and one is really empty. You follow me? And now imagine that you punch a hole between them. What's going to happen? The full one is going to drain into the empty one, and the water level is going to equalize. And that's an analogy for what happens when you plug batteries in parallel. If one battery is at full charge and one battery is empty, they will equalize. And they'll equalize by exchanging current, and that will result in heat, and that can result in fire. So when you plug batteries in parallel, they have to be very close to the same voltage. The general rule of thumb is 0.1 volts per cell. So for a 4-cell battery, there would be 0.4 volts apart. So if one was at 14.8 and one was at 15.2, that would be the absolute furthest apart you would want them to be. And the way it happens is that you go, oh yeah, all these batteries are at storage. I'm just going to plug them in. You start plugging them in, and you forget the fact that one of them was fully charged, and then you get a fire. Okay. The other thing that people do wrong with parallel charging is in a parallel array, if you've got one bad cell on one battery, it can ruin that same cell on all the other batteries in the array. If it tanks out and its voltage drops, it will suck all the other batteries down and destroy them. So you really want to parallel charge with batteries that you're confident are healthy. And if you've got a battery, so often people are like, well, this one battery, the cell got down to 2.5 volts, but I charged it up and it's fine. And I'm like, if you're that person, don't parallel charge, okay? You're gonna get yourself in trouble. Yeah, okay. Let's see. Do I know of any 220 volt soldering stations equivalent to the Hakko FX888D? To be honest with you, I don't pay a lot of attention to 220 versus 110. I just buy 110. So again, maybe the comments can help some folks over in Europe and stuff who are running on 220. Yep, not off the top of my head though. The 220 volt equivalent of the Hakko is over double the price. I don't know why that would be, but I would tell you this. If you're looking for a budget solder station, LUA. So these ones were introduced to me by SRA Solder. I did an interview with the guy from SRA Solder, and they sell these, but you can get them from SRA or you can get them from Amazon or whatever. This is Amazon US, by the way, but you can also get them on Amazon UK. And these come in both 220 and 110 versions, and they're pretty decent for the price. I'm not in love with the ergonomics of the handle, but as a soldering iron goes, it's pretty good, and it's pretty good price. So if you're looking for a reasonably priced 220 volt soldering station, I would have a look at the LUA brand. You can get it if you get it off of Amazon. Again, please feel free to use my affiliate links. By the way, you guys who shop Amazon overseas, you may be able to also use the links. I've signed up for a program with Amazon where when you click one of my U.S. links, if you're not in the U.S., it tries to find the local item at your regional Amazon, and so it may help even if you're outside the U.S. Let's see. 920 FPV says, is it smart to plug all the batteries in balance with no power leads for 15 minutes so you're for sure they're balanced? Personally, I would start with the main discharge leads because the main discharge leads are designed for high current. And so if you do get 8 or 10 amps flowing very briefly, which can happen, then the main discharge lead will soak it up easily, whereas the balance lead can burn out at that amps. So I would start with the XT60s and then plug the balance leads in next. Yeah, I don't know what's going on in the chat with Homegrown Canadian. What's going on in the chat, guys? Keep it. Hey, we're all having fun here. What's going on? Why the salt? I guess my moderator's gone off. I'm gonna have to find more moderators. See, now I'm just reading history. I'm reading the comments to see what people are saying instead of answering questions. What's going on in the comments? All right. Monogram Perspective gives $5. Thank you so much. And says, using a JB board, the moment I arm it, speeds up erratically, even with the props off. Well, so there's all kinds of reasons why the motors might spin, especially with the props off. But if the motors speed up erratically with the props on, the first thing I'd want to check is that the endpoints on the receiver are correct, that the throttle is at 1,000, that it's all the way down. Another thing you can do is if you've been messing with the gains, the D gains, if they're too high, and especially if air mode is active, the motors can begin to spin up as soon as you arm. It's a little hard to nail this one down, though. The other thing I would wonder is if it's trying to flip out and it's just not succeeding. As you raise the throttle, does it flip out? In which case you've got the Tasmanian devil problem where you can check that the board is facing the right direction. I've got a video, quadcopter flips on takeoff, that can address that. Let's see. Alan Luna, calibration flag problem. So if you try to arm your quad and your quad won't arm, then the next thing to do is to go to the command line and type status. And the status will give you the arming status flags, among other things, and that'll tell you why it won't arm. You can also go to the OSD. Hang on, I'll show you, because we got the technology to do that. One second. I'm plugging my quadcopter here. And start up Betaflight. And in Betaflight, you can go to the OSD tab, and you can find the warnings element, and you turn the warnings element on. Now, I had it off there, but if you turn the warnings element on, it will show you the arming status flag when you try to arm. It'll show you the reason why it's refusing to arm. And what you may find is that when you do that, it says calib, like calibrate. And what that means is that the gyro has not calibrated yet. Now, one reason that might be is, hang on, let's go back to my beautiful face. One reason that you might get the calib flag is that the gyros that we have now are more sensitive than the gyros that we used to use. And as a result, the amount of background noise that they have is higher. And the gyro, they may just be like, hey, why haven't you set the quadcopter down yet, you moron? And it's actually that the quadcopter is set down, it's sitting still, but the gyro is just still making so much background noise that it's refusing to calibrate. So the way to fix that, the short version is, now, if you get the arming status flag calib, what you want to do is you go to the CLI and you type set moron threshold equals, and you just take it all the way up to 200, and then save. And that will change the threshold that allows the gyro to calibrate and make it easier to calibrate. Now, if that doesn't work, then you may have a bad gyro, a damaged gyro, or a damaged flight controller. But that's the first thing you do, is if you get the calib frag, go raise the moron threshold. That is what it's called, unfortunately. Let's see. Any thoughts on what would show yaw oscillation only in black box? Well, yaw P gain too high? What fixes a little bit of prop wash? If I raise D gain, it gets a tick. Well, definitely don't do that. What fixes prop wash is turning your filters off. But the problem is if you raise D gain and you get a tick, then you probably can't turn your filters off either. And so you may have found the tuning limit of your current system, in which case, you may be in new flight controller, new motors. Have you soft mounted your flight controller? If you haven't soft mounted the flight controller, then do that, and also add a electrolytic capacitor. That may allow you to raise D gain or reduce filtering without having too much noise. Let's see. How can I flip the video upside down in my Runcam Micro Swift 2? I don't think the Micro Swift 2 can do that. I don't think it has a vertical flip. I'm pretty sure the Predator has a vertical and a horizontal flip, and I think the Cadex cameras also have vertical flip. You'd want to double check that, but I don't think the Swift has a vertical flip. The chat will correct me if I'm wrong about that. What is a tick, asks Bill Revenaugh. You say you increase D gain and you get a tick. What that means is this. Chemo Mercy, if you get no gyro, it's dead. Since it's a Kakute F4, it may be that the ribbon cable has been damaged, but no gyro means you can't. The flight controller's lost contact with the gyro, and basically that's it. If you could resolder a new gyro on, or maybe repair the ribbon cable, that may fix it. Going back to the previous question, what is a tick? He said when he raised D gain, he gets a tick. What that means is like you're hovering, and then suddenly the quad goes tick, tick, tick. Just little twitches like that. That means too much noise is getting into the gyro. Rotor G says Conasti tunes I to reduce bounce back. All respect to people who tune differently than me. There's always more for me to learn. I almost never pay attention to I, and I think the days when I caused bounce back are gone. Unless you have because there's so many things in Betaflight right now to fix I-term windup, which is the issue that causes I-term bounce back. So I haven't found, I haven't played with it, but I don't think I causes bounce back anymore. But if Conasti feels differently, maybe he's right. I honestly don't play with I very much, except to tune for sort of the looseness of the feel of the quad. So how can you, License to Drive says, I had a quad fail safe at 400 feet up. I got back into range on the way down, but I couldn't arm it before it crashed. How can I arm when I'm in free fall? The first thing you need to do is you need to disable small angle protection. So you're going to go into the GUI. Hang on. I'll show you. We'll go back to the quad here. Hold on. And here we go. So in Betaflight 3.3, they actually put this in the GUI. It didn't used to be in the GUI. You used to have to go to the command line. But it's in the configuration tab. And right here, maximum arm angle. You want to set that to 180. And that will disable what's called small angle protection. And what that means is that small angle protection will prevent the quad from arming when it's not level. The idea is that if you're holding the quad in your hand and you accidentally flip the arm switch, then small angle will prevent it from arming. The quad will only arm when it's level. That's a problem for a couple reasons. Number one, like if you're a racer and you're on the blocks, then you wouldn't be able to arm. And number two, if you're just freestyling and you're out and about, but the quad is on slightly unlevel ground, then it won't arm. But here's the biggest reason to disable small angle protection. I disable it on all my quads. The real reason is that many Betaflight flight controllers have a problem with accelerometer drift, which means that when you first power up, the accelerometer is level, but then over time it loses its level. And if you're flying in auto level mode, what will happen is the quad will just slowly want to roll to the left harder and harder until you power cycle it. What that means, though, is that if you power up the quad, then let's say you're not flying in auto level mode, but you just plug in the quad, you set it down, you walk away, you put your goggles on. 3 minutes later, the accelerometer has drifted, and now small angle will prevent it from arming, even though it's perfectly level. So I disable small angle on all my quads, and one thing that will let you do is if you're in free fall, you can arm. You can rearm again. So that's probably what prevented you from arming. Let's see. Let's see here. And you obviously you also need to throttle down. You need to throttle down. Sakekivi, tips for calibrating your Kakute current sensor. I would just keep repeating that process until I got into the right ballpark. Yeah. Yeah, it's probably a faulty gyro, Chemo. If you can get a spare gyro board from Holybro, and if you're good at soldering, you can replace it. That is the advantage of the Kakute external gyro. White Boy, if somebody did get a brand new J-Broadwell FC, plug it in and it fries, definitely reach out to your retailer or reach out directly to Race Day Quads. You will get a replacement. No questions asked. I mean, well, they'll ask, did you plug it in? Did you solder on it? Did you crash it? And if the answer is you plugged it in and the first thing that happened was it fried, it would just get you another one. It's been a real eye-opener for me releasing this flight controller, because I've always been the customer, never the manufacturer. Well, I don't like literally manufacture it, but the seller. And the fact is that with any hardware, there's going to be a failure rate. Whether it's 1% or 5% or 20%, there's a failure rate. And when you sell thousands and thousands of boards, and we have, even if the failure rate is very low, there's still going to be 50 people out there who had a board and they plugged it in and it fried. So all you can really do is take care of those people and get them new hardware and apologize. And that's what Race Day Quads is doing. And that's one of the reasons it was seeing how Race Day Quads took care of their customers that made me feel confident that I was happy to partner with them to release my flight controller. Because I mean, at the end of the day, you do the best you can, but it's not going to be perfect. And so at least you know that they're going to take care of the customers when the things go wrong. Benjamin Tar, I don't know why current limiting would give you a problem with turtle mode. My guess is that if you're having problems with turtle mode not working, that the ESC is not registering the DSHOT commands. And maybe you go from DSHOT 600 down to DSHOT 300. Maybe the ESC just isn't liking the DSHOT 600 or something like that. Crazy Sam, are you guys planning on doing any quad camps near Chicago? So Stingy is working on the schedule for like the next 6 months right now with the hopes of getting like a big schedule out as opposed to announcing it 1 month in advance like we have been doing. The problem is that it's really challenging to find the venue and so forth. So I don't know where the next ones are going to be. I will say this, over the summer months, we're giving a little bit more priority to places like that are up north. Whereas like if people say, when are you coming back to California? It's like, look, we could do California in September and it'll still be perfectly wonderful. But we'd love to get someplace like Chicago if we were going to Chicago during the summer, because come September, Chicago's not going to be real flyable. So I don't know where everybody's going. I don't know I know Detroit is next, and then that's it. But I know he's working on the schedule for the next 6 months with the hopes of getting it out all at once. Benjamin, if turtle mode works, the motors do reverse, but the props get stuck. It absolutely could be current limiting. It could be current limiting. Yep, absolutely. I mean, there's an easy way to tell. Benjamin, ultimately, apply your science. This is an easy one because you don't have to resolder. You don't do anything. Just go into BL Heli and turn current limiting off and then try it. And then you know the answer. And then you can tell me. And then I'll know. And then I'll tell everybody. So. Quad camp needs to come to Alaska, says Valerian. I've been to Anchorage once in my life. It was nice, but I'm not sure that that's going to be the first place we would choose to go, to be honest. No offense, Alaska. Let's see. Okay. You guys saying, bring quad camp here, bring quad camp there. You really need to be talking to Stinger Swarm, not me. I really do not set the schedule. I just show up and do quad camp. Matthew Pryor, you're saying BL Heli beacon motor buzzer is not working on one quad, but it's working on the others. Make sure that the ESCs support DSHOT commands. Some ESCs support DSHOT, but not DSHOT commands, mostly older ones. Be on the latest firmware. But yeah, for example, if turtle mode works, but DSHOT motor buzzer doesn't work, then that would be weird because that would tell you that DSHOT commands are working. There is a CLI option you need to do to turn on. And actually, it's not even in the CLI anymore. In Betaflight 3.3, they put it in the GUI, I'm pretty sure. Hang on, let's check that. I'm pretty sure it's in the GUI now. So what you want to do, assuming you're using Betaflight 3.3, is go to Configuration. Yep, right here. DSHOT beacon. Just make sure that option's enabled. If it's an older version, it's in the CLI, and it's this option here, beeper DSHOT beacon tone, needs to be set to any non-zero value, and that'll make it work. If you've got that set and it's still not working, my gut feeling is that your ESC doesn't fully support DSHOT commands. Ruslands Matej, I apologize, Ruslands, for says, can motor buzzer fry the motors? Yes, it can, depending on the motors. It can overheat them. So you don't want to leave motor buzzer running continuously. You want to flip the switch, beep the motors briefly, listen for your quad, walk towards it. Yep. Don't leave it running forever. You've got it turned on. Matthew says, I've got that option turned on and turtle mode does work, but I'm still confused. So I would make sure you were on the latest firmware for the ESCs. Maybe you are somehow on a version that supports DSHOT commands but not motor buzzer. That's the best I can give you. If that doesn't work, then I'm confused too. Let's see. Andreas Klein says, I have a problem. Motor 4 is spinning randomly. There's no input from the flight controller. What do I do? I already replaced the motor in the ESC, so it's definitely the flight controller. Don't want to replace because I don't want an adventure. So if you're using multi-shot or one-shot, then a motor randomly twitching is probably miscalibration. You need to go through the calibration procedure. If you search my channel for how to calibrate ESCs, you'll find a video showing you how to do that. If you're using DSHOT, then calibration does not apply. There is no calibration for DSHOT. That's kind of one of the advantages of DSHOT. And in that case, if it's randomly twitching, then I would guess that you're using like DSHOT 600, but the ESC only supports DSHOT 300 or 150, and it's getting it. You know, it's you need to reduce that speed or get a new ESC. By the way, some people asked what I'm drinking. This is peach mango crystal light powder with carbonated water from my SodaStream, which is a home carbonation device. It's super awesome. Carbonated water, carbonated drinks, anytime. It's great. True Style. The Lightning Stalker gives $1. Doesn't ask a question, but there's your shout out, Lightning Stalker. Thank you for your $1. True Style gives $5 and says, does any new flight controller with built-in PDB stick out to you? You can't say yours. At handling lots and lots of crashes and not losing any accuracy and reliability. Unfortunately, that's too hard to call because there's no control for how a crash happens. You could have the best flight controller and it crashes and you just get unlucky and you break it. There's just not enough reliable data on that. I'm sorry to say. I'll say this. I think that F4s are slightly more durable than F7s because the larger chip on the F7 is more prone as the board flexes. It flexes harder and it's more likely to like crack a trace. That's just a gut feeling though. I have no data to support that. If I really cared about reliability, I would be looking at, I'd probably look at an MPU 6000 gyro and an F4. That's probably where I'd be. But that's just a gut feeling, not based on data. 3.2 ARMS, Lightning Stalker gives $2 and asks, Betaflight 3.2 ARMS with 8K sampling but not 16K sampling. The answer to that is that when you enable 32K sampling, hold on, we'll go back to the screen here. So when you do this in the configuration tab, when you enable 32K sampling mode, the gyro instantly becomes both, not instantly, you have to hit save. There, okay. The gyro instantly becomes both more sensitive and more noisy. And it doesn't matter what you've got in the pull-down menu, that's true. So the minute you enable that 32K thing, you also have to go play with the stage 2 filter or the Kalman filter if you're using Butterflight. You have to play with that. You can't just enable that option and then go fly. You're going to have huge noise issues usually. So when you say that you're at 1616, that means you've got that enabled because you can't go above 8K without that. When you say 8.8, I'm guessing it's turned off, and that's why it won't arm because the gyro won't calibrate at 1616. You need to go back and do more on threshold, like I showed earlier. As soon as you enable that 32K mode, number one, you need to be enabling the stage 2 filter, and number two, you may need to adjust the more on threshold. Let's see. Will I try any 360 camera, asks More Wacky C. I actually tried a 360 camera, the Andor 360 camera. The video is probably still up on my channel. It was cute. It was cute. It was kind of big and heavy, and I'm not sure I loved it. There's newer 360 cameras out that are smaller, and that have more automatic function, like automatically keeping the horizon. And it may be interesting, but it's kind of a novelty to me. I just like FPV. Okay, let's see here. What do you think about the Cicada 30 amp 4-in-1 all-in-one board? Here's what I think about Cicada. Cicada is the same as Racer Star. If you want to buy a Cicada or a Racer Star, what you should do is you should go to Get FPV and you should buy the Lumineer board. The Lumineer flight controller and the Lumineer 4-in-1 ESC are really. Hang on. I just got a phone call from the. Anyway, I just told him I'm literally live streaming right this minute. The Lumineer. Let me just pull one up so you guys can see what I'm talking about. So let's see here. 4-in-1. That's a Speedix. Where's the Lumineer 4-in-1? Yeah, like this. Come on. Racer Star. I should just search for what I'm looking for. Lumineer 4-in-1. Any day now. Yeah, so like these products here, this Lumineer, I'm 99% sure that that's actually a Cicada or a Racer Star. They're the same. That's just a rebadge of the Cicada or the Racer Star. I know that Lumineer have done that in the past with some of their ESCs, and I think they're still doing it. Now, here's why I say that. Now, some people at this point are going, "What? They're just sticking a sticker on something and they're raising the price. How dare they?" No, hang on, because here's what you get with Lumineer that you don't get when you buy a Cicada. This right here. You see this? That's what you get when you buy from Get FPV that you don't get. And what that means is that, so like Racer Star ESCs are okay ESCs, but I feel like they have a high defect rate. And I say that because people are constantly contacting me and saying, "Hey, I bought these ESCs and one went up in smoke. What did I do wrong?" And a lot of the time it's a Racer Star. So my theory is if you want to buy a Racer Star product or a Cicada product, buy it from Get FPV under the Lumineer badge. And then if it goes up in smoke, they'll just send you another one, which you're not going to probably get that if you buy it off of like GearBest. So that's what I think about that. Why didn't you guys include the Sharp Bando in the Rotor Ride episode about locations? I read the comments on that. So we did a Rotor Ride episode with Drew where we did top 5 iconic FPV spots. Okay. And there was a lot of comments about spots that you guys thought should have been in there that we left out. But here's the thing. Number one, everybody's opinion is different. So obviously you guys have different opinions. That's fine. But number two, we were focused on what we thought were iconic spots, by which we meant spots that people saw and then they wanted to go fly them. And maybe they made like a pilgrimage. So like the Charpou Hospital is an amazing FPV spot. But I didn't hear like people saying, "I got to go fly there." It was just like, wow, Charpou did a great edit. Whereas some of these other spots that we picked, we felt like were more inspired people to emulate. But we could be wrong about that, and you could have a different opinion. The bottom line is we just sat down and we thought of 5 spots, and we were like, oh, here's the 5 we're going to go with. You can't take listicles too seriously. That's that kind of video, top 5X. That's a listicle. It's a fun video, and it's easy to make, and it gets people thinking, and it's always fun for us to read the comments and say, oh, yeah, the Charpou Hospital. But at the end of the day, don't think we there's no rigor behind it. We just went, okay, 5 iconic spots. How about this? How about that? We brainstormed. We picked 5. We made the video, and we got on with our day. So. Oh, so, all right, guys. Well, that is going to be it because apparently I have a phone call that I'm supposed to be on right now. And it's been 3 hours, and I said the call was going to end at 4 anyway. So I guess I was going to keep going, but then I have this phone call. So now I'm going to go do my phone call. So that's going to be it. I'm going to sign off. Randy Lockman, sorry you just tuned in. This is actually the official ending time, so it's not even ending early. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. Thank you for your support, for using my affiliate links. To all my patrons who support me every month, thank you so much. To everybody who watches the videos, even if you don't give cash, you're watching the videos. To everybody who makes it possible for me to do what I do and to apparently do it full time. It's amazing. I appreciate it so much. We're going to sign off, and I'll do another one the next time. I'm going to be in town for a while before the next quad camp. This quad camp's in town, so see. Whenever I'm traveling, I'm always too exhausted to live stream. But now that I'm back in town for a little while, we'll hopefully get a couple more in before the next trip that I'm on. Thank you guys. That's it for me, and I am out of here. Happy flying.